Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where socially awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, folks. 120 episodes.
Yeah, and I am your host, last time will wannabe, the brainstormer of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight? What up? Ed Brewer. Long time no see, man. Yeah, okay, so this is going to be a kind of different, man, because like it's our 120 and we kind of do things a little differently always. So yeah, we're kind of continuing off of our 100th episode special, which was watching a few videos that we usually unfortunately we weren't able to finish one that we had started.
Yeah, surprising no one, it was Jonathan McIntosh, because that boy packs the stupidity into his videos with a freaking tamping iron.
Right. I actually will need like a minute to search where we had stopped because I don't remember. So
okay, yeah. We're knocking over basically an anti-SJW rite of passage by responding to the erstwhile acts of Enid Sarkeesian and her benefactor, Mr. Jonathan McIntosh, otherwise known as the Pop Culture Detective, otherwise known as Male Feminist Bot number 1472.
right. Like I said, we are going to continue from where we had left off in episode 100. So if you guys want to see the first part of this video and like the other video we covered prior to that, you can go there. Just for time purposes, yeah, we're going to start off where we left off. Give me a sec while I look that up where we stopped. Give them a little background on. Could you give them a little background on the video?
Okay, so as far as I remember, in the video we are responding to, Mr. McIntosh is going to explain why portrayals of geek masculinity in media are toxic, as well as the stereotypical jock masculinity. So it's not just the alpha male dickheads that we all were frustrated by in high school and then college that he has a problem with. It's also, paradoxically, the nerds who have any self-respect in the fact that they are nerds that he has a problem with. Despite, his own very, very hipstery tendencies and very, very servile towards women mentality, you would think it would occur to him at some point that he is toxic in the way that he claims everything else is. But, the average self-awareness of your average male feminist being what it is, he's basically going to use the Big Bang Theory and other, like, pop culture geek mainstays as a means to shit all over the unmasculine men, as well as the hypermasculine ones. So, if you have, like, uber jock machismo, you're bad. If you have the absolute opposite of that and have nothing but nerdiness in you, you're also bad. The only variety of man that is apparently acceptable in the mind of Jonathan McIntosh are the men who unsurprisingly bear a striking resemblance to Jonathan McIntosh.
Right.
Who would have guessed?
For the record, I thought we were in 5 minutes. We're actually like halfway through the video. I legitimately forgot that.
Yeah, we made it a good portion in, I think.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Yay.
I legitimately forgot we were halfway through the video. I thought we were like at the beginning of it, which had me horrified, but also like, huh.
Yeah. Yay.
Right. Also, again, full disclosure, we again, it's the whole 20 seconds thing just on the YouTube thing. It's just like,
yeah.
So in case, but also the fact that we will, if we don't have anything to say because we got cut into a point because of the 20 seconds, we will say banana, which is the kind of thing we always do. So
yeah, which is a trick we borrowed from the people, the good folks over at Honey Badger Radio, in case anyone didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Because I am a massive fanboy of the Honey Badgers, and I always wanted to be on a stream where they did that, so I brought it over here, and now we do it. And ironically, because of editing software and stuff, I don't even think they do it anymore, but I don't care. I'm keeping it.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, this is the dorkable misogyny of the Big Bang Theory. This is, yeah, like I said, this is by the Pop Culture Detective, a.k.a. Jonathan McIntosh. I got that right?
Yes.
Okay. Like I said, if you guys want to see the first half, please go check out. I have links in the description for it as well as the video itself. If you want to check that out yourself, don't know why, but you know, it's there.
If you want to see us rip Jonathan McIntosh a new one, because Lord knows you can never see Jonathan McIntosh torn down enough, then you can go there and watch that.
Also, full disclosure, this is kind of an old video. I think it's like 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was mostly just because every time we get an anniversary, in terms of like a milestone, for our podcast, I always like to go back over like the classic icons of anti-SJW responses and see if we can knock over one of the standard ones. One of these times we're gonna have to do Steve Shives because that's another standard candle we should knock over.
Before we get started, because I told Dalton this, it is kind of sweltering in my room right now, so I have to close for like noise purposes.
No.
And no central air in my room at all.
Yeah. It's the beginning of summer, folks. We're doomed.
I'm gonna get a drink real quick because I also feel like I need one for this.
Yeah, and I have a water just in case for such situations.
Yeah, Give me like 1 minute. I'll be right back.
Okay. And while we're waiting for him, normally this is where I would try to fill the dead air with song, but that would entail probably singing the Big Bang Theory theme, and fuck no to that notion. Ed said something though, so okay, he was just telling me to fill the air. Hopefully my explanation as to why I didn't fill the air with the Big Bang Theory theme is satisfactory. Nobody needs that shit. Even less than they need Macintosh in their lives. I mean, this is the man who wasn't good enough for Anita Sarkeesian, for fuck's sake. Even though he created and sustained the enterprise that gave us Anita Sarkeesian.
Okay, I'm back. I got like one of those citrus sodas with like ice.
Aha.
Oh god, that's good. That is good. Refreshing. Anyway, yeah, let's
Did you figure out how to make your towel into a do-rag yet, by the way?
no, it's still pretty much. I look like a fucking judge from like 15th century. Well, whenever they stop wearing powder wigs, I don't really know nor really care.
That's a good question. I've never researched that. That is a researched question that I'm going to have to fix now.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah. Again, if you want to see the first half of this video, go check out our 100th episode. Podcast 100, podcast storm number 100. It'll be in the. It's in the playlist. Anyway, yeah. Shall we?
We shall.
He might roll his eyes at his friends' antics, but he never seriously challenges their behavior.
But I'd like to get lost in her Bermuda Triangle. It's not helpful. Then I won't say I'd like to cover 3/4 of her surface area. We done?
And his mom.
Okay.
Yes, Macintosh, because what they are doing is not A, morally wrong, or B, criminally actionable. And therefore, there is no implied need for Leonard to challenge them. You have to keep in mind, Macintosh, that as censorious and prudish and Puritan as the social justice mob might be, they got nothing on the MPAA. Okay, and I can't remember off the top of my head if the MPAA is the same entity that regulates TV. I want to say no, but point being, TV censors, especially in the realm of sitcoms, Macintosh, morally sterilize everything.
Network, at least.
Yeah. They morally sterilize everything. If there was anything resembling genuinely criminally actionable behavior or genuinely shocking behavior, it would not make it to air, Macintosh. And also, friends banter, Macintosh. It is a thing. In the privacy of their own spaces, whether it's, in a stream like this, or if it's just friends shooting the shit in the bar on a Friday night or whatever, people banter. Doesn't mean they think any less of women, especially considering that in this clip you've shown us, they are describing the kinds of pleasurable actions they would like to perform on the woman to make her happy because they desire her. This is not misogyny. By categorical definition, this is the exact opposite of misogyny. In fact, most acts of quote-unquote misogyny in history are usually done as an attempt to protect and provide for the woman. So much so that her safety becomes more important to the person protecting her than her freedom, and that is where it always goes wrong. Very counterintuitive example for you, Macintosh. Most people, even among the anti-SJW community, will swear up and down to you that Muslims are misogynist because of the burqa. What they don't appear to understand is in the Quran, where it actually advises modesty or the burqa, the justification for it has nothing to do with repress the woman's sexuality. It has to do with men are alleged to be violent, rapey beasts, and therefore women need to cover up, which is exactly the same bullshit feminists pull in terms of the whole male gaze thing. The only difference between a radical Muslim in this regard and you, Macintosh, is, and I do mean you because I know full well that you are a sex-negative feminist, which, in my opinion, the sex-negative intersectionalist feminists are the worst variety of feminists, which is a high bar.
That's sad.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just
Yeah.
had to offer it, but
That's neither here nor there. But yeah, in terms of protecting women from their own tendencies and from the tendencies of men, Macintosh, the only difference between radical Muslims and you is feminists like you look at a man's desiring gaze at a woman and you say his gaze is harmful to her and implies that he wants to do bad things to her, therefore he should stop looking. What the radical Muslim says in such a case is the man's gaze is harmful and predatory to the woman, so we should cover her up so that he can't see her. That's the only difference. In the case of the radical Muslim, and this is the only case where I will in any way defend radical Islam, they at least put the responsibility for protecting themselves to some degree on women by asking them to cover themselves up. You believe all the same bullshit about men being toxic and predatory and rapey and all that shit, but you put it on the man who you just accused of being predatory to not look at the woman and therefore not be predatory. That's the only difference in terms of the feminist male gaze concept and the Muslim women must dress modesty to the point where we have to force her to wear the burqa concept. That's the only difference. Both of you want to protect women so much that you will actually restrict her freedoms. That's not misogyny. That is desire and quite frankly, pathological worship of a woman's purity gone wrong, if anything, Macintosh. But anyway, moving on. Or I guess because he is named after a fruit, Macintosh.
So you want to put that in dissertation, Professor, or?
Huh?
Nah, never mind. Joke didn't work.
I'm gonna assume that was mocking me at the length of the rant, but that's a different thing. Yeah.
That's a pretty regular length for you when you rant. So
yeah.
When have you ever done like a long ass rant? No offense, just like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, villain total. You'd be a total monologuer. Like seriously, man. That's a compliment, by the way.
Yeah, it's the best part of being a villain. The grandiose gestures, the awesome costumes, the cool powers, and the monologuing. Best parts of being a villain.
Ed Brewer says, "Why do women need protection? Aren't they equal?" That's a good question, and it's a question I ask myself too, man. Small men aren't afforded this protection.
That's also a very good point. We all of this, we must protect and provide for the women bullshit is based on, well, they're so much weaker and so much more like childlike and pure than us. Therefore, we must protect that purity.
May I?
Yeah.
And you can make fun of me all you want, Don.
Mm-hmm.
There are literally women out there that are trained martial artists that can kick the ass of some of the most toughest looking motherfuckers in prison.
Yeah.
Okay? For the record, those are my kind of women. And like again, Don, you can make fun of me all you want for it.
Yes. We all know your perpetual crush, and I swear to God, if you can make it through the Dresden Files without developing a crush on Karen Murphy, I will eat one of my hats.
Yeah.
Won't be one of the nice ones because these are expensive, but I will eat one of my hats if you make it through the Dresden Files series without falling in love with Karen Murphy.
I honestly wouldn't make that, but no, I get your point, man. Like, it's a thing that bugs me. With SJWs, like personally, I guess. I mean, like I have a lot of issues that are kind of surface level, but this is kind of like a personal thing for me. Is they're not looking for equality for women or anyone. They more just want to control people. Which I'm aware that we pretty much have gotten. We already understand this point. I've understood it for like years already. It's something that needs to be said. Obviously,
it's because they they frame everything in terms of this abstract, structural, greater good that they believe in. And they don't. And here's the other thing: I don't think at bottom they have empathy for women, because when a woman disagrees with the ideology of feminism, she is persona non grata in about 5 seconds flat. Look at Karen Strawn, look at Alison Tiemann, look at Gina Carano, for crying out loud. And she was a feminist icon right up until she said the one and only thing that got her yeeted from the internet forever. Look at Ronda Rousey. Feminists hate her for some reason, despite the fact that she is, by definition, one of the strongest and most capable and independent women on the fucking planet, and she doesn't even pander to male beauty standards, really. I mean, obviously she has natural beauty, but she doesn't pretty herself up, and she doesn't she doesn't try to make herself look more beautiful. She just happens to be so badass that men can't help from drooling. And well, we just established what your type is. Are you honestly telling me you wouldn't fawn over Ronda Rousey?
No.
Okay.
It's a weird thing. I'm aware. It's just
it just doesn't jive with most of what I know about your standards. So I'll put a pin in that for later. But getting back to the thing that Ed brought up, and that I was going to put a little bit of a finer point on. We make all of these rules and regulations and cultural traditions of men being protectors and providers and all of this shit because somewhere deep inside our instincts, deep inside our subconscious as a species, we're still living in the Stone Age, and we go, women are to be protected because propagation of the species and maternal ability and sexual power as a woman and so on and so forth. And yet, we don't. Despite the fact that every time somebody says, like, maybe you shouldn't be so overprotective of women, you get the white knights going, oh, but women are so much weaker than men. Oh, but women are so much more morally pure than men. Oh, this or that and the other. Despite that, when a man is small and weak and shitty, other men and even some women have no problem beating the living fuck out of them if they step out of line ever. But you even insinuate doing anything you would normally do to a frail, nerdy guy such as myself to a woman, and you are going to be in a body cast or a morgue in about 5 seconds flat because everyone around you, men, women, and indifferent, will be beating the living fuck out of you, or be calling the police so that they can beat the fuck out of you, or inciting an angry mob so that they can beat the fuck out of you. Like, those are your only options. If you say to a nerdy, frail woman what you would normally say and do to a nerdy, frail guy when no one is looking or when they pissed you off, you will be in prison or dead in a fortnight. I guarantee it.
Yep.
Yep. But anyway, Macintosh.
Yeah. Someone's still firing off fireworks.
Uh-huh.
And
it's still not even dark out.
No, I think it's like one of those, like, it's either like Roman candles or like firecrackers. I think in Roman candles, actually.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It's been going on for like the past month.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Yep. Macintosh, whatever.
Yep.
Mild protests work as a springboard for still more sexist jokes.
Not yet. This is fun.
It's a sitcom, Macintosh. It's a sitcom.
Sheldon is the innocent bigot. Most of the guys display a general disdain for icky girl stuff. But Sheldon's
got Sheldon's a lot of things. Not really misogynistic, to be fair. Honestly, he's more misandrous. He doesn't really like anyone. If I remember the show correctly.
You mean misanthropic.
Misanthropic.
Misandrous is the hatred of men, misogyny is the hatred of women, and misanthropy is the hatred of basically all humans.
Yeah, pretty much that. I mean, he's kind of one of the more complex characters in the show, which isn't really saying much, but still.
Yeah, he doesn't have the capacity to understand most social cues, and he also has an intellect much higher than most people. That means that his frame of reference is his mind is essentially pointed at other things. It's not pointed at social interaction and understanding people. It's pointed at understanding like the underpinnings of the cosmos and shit. So much so that he basically ignores the human scale of problems in favor of purely logical or purely like scientific problems.
There is a thing I could like the innocent part I can kind of get because it does seem like he's not like matured emotionally, but that could be because of like again just was tested. That is actually confirmed.
This is one of the problems I actually have with the Big Bang Theory itself. Sheldon, when the show started, was a much more, not necessarily more socially aware, but he was much more human and capable of being like bantery and snarky along with everyone else. Like one of my favorite lines from this, I think it was the first episode of Big Bang Theory, or it might have been the second. Was when they were trying to move a couch to impress Penny because Leonard, and his one-itis, and the couch comes tumbling down the 3 flights of stairs, and Sheldon looks back over his shoulder, realizing what just happened, and he goes, "Gravity, thou art a heartless bitch." Cut to 3 to 5 seasons later, and he doesn't even like swearing or hasn't even heard swear words because his mother apparently was such a sheltering Christian, even though past Sheldon had no problem with bantering and making lewd references. He just made it in a very arcane and intellectualized way because that's how he approaches the world.
As much as we give the Big Bang Theory shit, which it deserves a lot, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the first couple seasons are good. I've mostly watched the second season, to be honest.
I usually start hedging around season 3. Everything up to about season 3 I thought was okay. Season 4 started to get iffy. Season 5 is usually where I stop, and anything after season 5 is just I find it unwatchable mostly.
Yeah, biggest problem with the show is not this dumbass that we're watching right now, which is a problem, to be honest, because this guy is just more projecting. It's more the show just kind of sucks.
Yeah, my biggest problem with the Big Bang Theory can be summed up as such. In the first 3 seasons, Sheldon, Howard, Raj, and Leonard were fully rounded geek characters for the most part. And yes, while the show did mock geekiness and the socially awkwardness of geeks here and there, it also occasionally took time out to put the shoe on the other foot and show that maybe these geeks had something worthwhile to contribute because normal people were and I'm gonna use this as a compliment, and I don't often use the show as a compliment, but I'm gonna do it anyway. It used to be back in the day in Big Bang Theory, they did with the geek characters and the normal characters what Rick and Morty does with Rick and Jerry. While both of them are pathetic in various different ways and or competent in various different ways, you can see situations where one of them has a point or the other one has a point. After about season 3 or season 4, though, it started to get into let's flanderize the fuck out of these characters so they have one personality trait each and make the show only about shitting on how socially awkward the geeks are. And never ever mocking the normal stupid people for being normal or stupid. And that's when Big Bang Theory lost its luster for me, because I am comfortable in myself enough and self-aware enough and self-examining enough that I know I have flaws. I know I'm an asshole. I know I'm socially awkward. I know I miss certain social cues with certain normal people and whatnot. I am fine with being lampooned every great now and again, as long as it's not everything about you sucks and you should be completely different. As long as every great now and again there's at least token representation of, these guys are atypical, but they might have a point, because maybe the normal way of doing things isn't by default the best way of doing things. But if all you're going to do is let's point and laugh at the geeks, haha, while still claiming to love the science, quote unquote, then yeah, you've lost me. Basically, it's the difference between Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in the 90s and Steve Urkel in the 90s. It used to be that they treated the geek characters kind of like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air treated Carlton. But as Big Bang Theory went along, it got less and less Carlton and more Steve Urkel. And therein lies the problem.
Yep. Anyway, shall we?
Yep, Macintosh.
Macintosh.
But Sheldon is the one who harbors the most virulent form of casual misogyny.
Tonight's theme, flags of countries that have been torn apart, and the women I have a feeling were responsible. My father used to say that a woman is like an egg salad sandwich on a warm
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Before you do, Don, can I just add the part where these are very much out of context?
Yes. Yes. In the case of the first clip, he had just gone through a breakup with Amy for the duration of the episode, and he was trying to express his feelings without admitting that he had feelings, because, as we know, Sheldon prizes unemotionality and logic in very much the same manner as I do. Shut up.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
But
I wasn't gonna say it.
But funny backstory for anyone that doesn't know this already, and I think I might have told Brainstormer this already, but the way I ended up getting into Big Bang Theory back in the day was my cousin started calling me Sheldon, and I didn't really understand why, and then in my high school psychology class, we were watching the episode where Sheldon tries to operantly condition Penny, and then, as you can imagine, I was quite mad at my cousin for quite a while, because I finally understood what he was saying when he started calling me Sheldon. So yeah, the way I got into this show was by being compared to Sheldon. But back to the actual point, and sidebar over. Sheldon had just broken up with Amy, his girlfriend, and was blowing off steam without admitting that that's what he was doing. And in the case of the clip that you are currently showing, Macintosh, I believe he is either talking to his redheaded assistant character, whose name I forget, because it was like in season 5 and I don't remember that far back, or he was talking to the human resources lady, and he was telling a story about something that his father used to tell him. That doesn't mean that he believes that. It means that is his point of reference. And that is the problem with Sheldon. It's not that he believes all the stupid bullshit that he was fed as a child, but it is the case that because of his implied being on the spectrum, albeit a very high functioning on the spectrum, that he doesn't have any other major points of reference, so he has to extrapolate from that. And even if he doesn't believe all the traditionalistic bullshit he was fed as a child, he still has to default back to that if he's trying to deal with other human beings, because for all he knows, that is the default for most other human beings, essentially. And if I'm not misremembering, and this is the scene where he's talking to the human resources lady, he's making a point about evolutionary psychology and determinism, but he's doing it really poorly. And he ends up using the phrase, "You're a slave to your biological and psychological urges," talking to a black woman, which gets taken out of context because human resources is a fucking nightmare, even though the audience and Sheldon both know he wasn't making a point of calling someone a slave or implying that someone should be a slave. He was making a point that human nature is human nature and we can't really fight it. We're essentially slaves to it. If unless I'm misremembering. Or he's misreading the fact that he angered someone and insinuating that it might be because they're hormonal, because to him, a person being hormonal is a more rational justification than he pissed someone off, because Sheldon is both very socially awkward and very self-satisfied with his intelligence, because he is evidently more intelligent than most people, and that makes him think that he is better than those people, especially because no one ever bothered to teach him the nuances of human nature, and the people he learned those nuances from were moralistic twits from Texas who basically were hicks. And I can say that because I'm from rural Pennsylvania, so don't at me. Anyway, Macintosh.
Yeah, 1 sec. Let me get to the tab. Yep. Yeah, I got nothing to say. Don't be mistook at all. All right. 10 minutes and 9 seconds. That's how much we got left.
Slow moving.
Yeah, Macintosh.
Macintosh.
He says a lot of stupid shit in just 20 seconds. So
He does. He packs it. I swear to you, he packs more stupidity per sentence into a video than almost anyone else I think we've ever covered. Barring maybe that time we covered the Gavin McInnes video, which I think was also our 100th.
yeah, it was. It was the first video that we did, and that maybe took all our fucking time, mostly. Yeah. So
because Gavin was being a traditionalistic moron as opposed to a social justice oriented moron.
Yep. Anyway, Macintosh. Right.
Macintosh.
Texas Day.
Okay, so yeah, it was the redheaded assistant. Okay.
Okay. So that clarifies that.
Which I also think is what got him sent to HR, honestly.
Yeah. And the fault here has nothing to do with his opinions of women or anything else. It has to do with the fact that he decided to make he was trying to translate a very specific point he was trying to make using a metaphor, because that's what he is taught by his friends human beings do. He's essentially trying to dumb down a point because he doesn't understand why the people around him didn't get his point by reaching out to them with a metaphor. And he doesn't understand why the metaphor he chose, or the point he's trying to use as a segue to his other point, is off-putting or insulting in some way. Which very, very, very little good can be said about Sheldon Cooper, especially in the later seasons. But at the very least, that implies that he would not take offense to such a thing. And that is the other thing. People who generally don't take offense to things often are the same people who don't understand why others would take offense to things, because they don't understand the fact that some people have different offense thresholds than them, or why.
Yeah, for as smart as he is, he's still a fucking idiot when it comes to people. It's not, you have to be an absolute genius to understand.
Yeah, because the kinds of intelligence that result in understanding human beings are different from the kind of intelligence that is required to to deal with like science and empiricism and a bunch of very like linear and straightforward technical concepts, because human beings are by their very nature complicated and uncertain of themselves, so it's very difficult for a person to be certain of them, whereas scientific facts and mathematical facts are very straightforward. So if you are a person who thinks in that very straightforward linear way, you're not going to translate that well to human beings unless you study evolutionary psychology and social psychology like it's going out of fashion. Hi, that's one of the reasons I'm good at reading people, because I wasn't always good at picking up social cues, so I decided to figure out what is the rational reasoning behind this bullshit. And I did, and therefore it makes it easier for me to translate between highfalutin, straightforward, linear concepts and the complex clusterfuck that is human behavior. And likewise, there are other varieties of people who are very, very good at reading people and reading a room and reading social cues, but wouldn't dream of doing a math problem to save their lives. Because they're different kinds of intelligence.
Right. Kelly?
Macintosh.
Macintosh.
This day.
What?
Full of eggs and only appealing for a short time.
The whole shtick of Sheldon's character is that he's too smart to understand or care to understand what's socially appropriate and what's not. As such, he's dismissive of nearly everyone and their feelings.
Sorry, I had to finish.
No, Macintosh, once again, it is the fact that he is very high functioning in terms of mathematical, scientific, and possibly even academic intelligence, but he is absolutely rubbish when it comes to reading social cues, subtleties of body language, and just language in general, and basically the intricacies of human interaction. And the reason this character exists, Macintosh, is because there are people like this, and it is very possible that many of the stereotypes and cliches appended to the nerd identity were born out of things like the spectrum, the autism spectrum, because generally in those cases, or at least in a large plurality of those cases, you'll have someone who can't read social cues to save their lives, but can grasp extremely complicated linear and literal truths, especially because people on the spectrum tend to fixate on something that they can understand, because their brain is grasping at any straw that it can get, basically anything it can latch onto, and social interaction just ain't it. But we are a social species, so we still have the wiring to seek out that connection. So instead of seeking out that connection with people, they seek out the connection with subjects and information. That's why Sheldon is the way he is. It's because they wanted to basically do a socially awkward genius taken to the nth degree. Also, I will point this out, what we call genius is very, very similar fundamentally to what we call madness. Because in order to be creative enough and spontaneous enough to be a genius, you have to think in non-normal terms. Because if thinking in normal terms could get you there, you wouldn't need to be a genius to figure it out. It takes a genius to be able to look at norms, to look at the way things have always been done and go, okay, but that doesn't really make entire amounts of sense, though. Let's try it this different way. And sometimes that different way takes the form of craziness and instability and schizophrenia, and sometimes, very rarely, you get a Nikola Tesla or an Einstein out of it. the facility that causes madness and genius is functionally the same. The ability to make connections other people don't make because your brain works in a different way than most people's brains do, and norms don't really matter to you. The difference is the result. When the creativity and the connections your brain makes result in self-destructive habits or self-destructive obsessions, we call it madness. When the creativity and connections your brain makes that other people would ignore because norms are lucrative and result in paradigm shifts, we call it genius. And if you know anything about historical geniuses, you know it's very much not just a one-way street. People who have been geniuses are also often crazy motherfuckers. Nikola Tesla's last friend on Earth was a pigeon he was choosing to nurse back to health that he found on the street, for example. Leonardo da Vinci assumed until the day he died that the world was going to end in a cataclysmic flood because of something that happened to him when he was a child. And Einstein had all sorts of arbitrary, superstitious rules right up until the day he died as well. Not to mention that he barely ever took the time to comb his hair because he was always so hyper fixated on whatever idea was tickling his fancy at that particular moment.
Right. Okay, so Ed has said a few things.
Uh-huh.
Men and women alike, he doesn't care who gets offended. Talking about children there, obviously. How many geniuses have we lost to be locked up or drugged out from being perceived as mad?
That's a very good question, and the answer is probably a fuck ton of them. Especially because, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I too many to actually count. That was what I was saying.
I mean, I don't think I'm a genius by any stretch of the imagination, but using myself as an example, I am gay, crippled, and a practicing occultist. Any one of those in various bygone eras would have been enough to lock me up in a sanitarium and drug me out on whatever drug they had at the moment to keep someone docile. All three of them together still gets me side-eye every now and then, and we've moved on to a much more tolerant culture when it comes to things like mental illness and shit. Not to mention the fact that I also happen to have crippling anxiety, optic nerve damage, yada yada yada. So, like, and again, not saying I'm a genius, but if to be as humble as possible, fairly intellectual people like me would get locked in the sanitarium a couple centuries ago. How many people smarter than me, but also slightly crazier than me, have gotten locked up just because no one was on their level and couldn't follow what they were saying? Because that is kind of quite a shocking number, actually, probably.
Mm.
But anyway, Macintosh.
Yeah, 1 sec. Oh God, I feel like a sneeze is coming. Am I gonna sneeze? Am I gonna sneeze or not? What the fuck? Guess not.
It'll happen when you're least expecting it to happen, and it'll be the most annoying thing ever. It always happens that way.
It always does. Okay. Yeah, Macintosh.
Of nearly everyone and their feelings. But when he belittles and devalues women, it's very specifically because they are women.
Thanks to you, I know better than to ask if you're menstruating. And based on your behavior, I don't have to.
Okay.
Okay, Dom, before you do, this is me like mentioning with the show. I feel like you were gonna mention it, but the context of it is the dude is in HR, and no one likes HR because they are assholes. Literally, anyone who's worked at a job that has an HR department, like literally, just tell us, like, have you not been Like those
Yeah.
those guys are just fucking dicks.
They are the modern day Spanish Inquisition, but for social justice is the thing. But here's the irony. Macintosh doesn't understand that because Macintosh is one of the few people on this earth that thinks that HR departments are good and pure and virtuous people fighting the good fight and doing what should be done.
Right. Also, for the record, like, it doesn't matter who is the HR representative. No one likes HR, dude or woman or whatever. No one likes them because
Yeah.
they suck so much.
Yeah. The ideologies underpinning modern HR departments are shies, and therefore the behavior of the people involved in those ideologies are shies. And the fact that every single company, political institution, or basically structured endeavor in Western human civilization needs an HR and PR department now is frustrating. It's like back in the day if every company it's actually worse than when traditionalism was in full force. Okay? Because even back in the bygone eras of traditionalism, there wasn't a company priest on staff at all times. If that had happened, I'd be saying the exact same thing about that variety of moral puritanism.
I
But
won't lie though, that sounds kind of interesting just to see.
yeah, there's an interesting like satirical or maybe like just an alternate universe like alt history story in there somewhere. But point being, even when traditionalism was at its worst, there was still some kind of separation between Queen Elizabeth I and whoever the head of the Anglican Church was at the time, or whatever, or the difference between the Medici family who ran Italy at the time and the Pope, and so on. As much as the church did meddle, and as much as we do definitely need church and state to be separated, and so on, it never got to the point of like every time you start a business, you must have a priest on file. Otherwise, you are sinful and you're going, buy an indulgence from the church. Well, actually, no. I guess HR and PR departments are kind of like the modern day version of buying indulgences from the Catholic Church. So they got close, but that's still not quite as bad. Ed said something. Brainstormer? Oh, I guess he's off doing something. I will. Okay. The
Yeah,
HR department coming
sorry,
to be.
Yeah, sorry. I had to take care of my dog. Bedtime and all. I saw Ed wrote that before I left.
Mhm.
Did the HR department come into being from women in the workplace? I don't know. It's not really something.
I would say the most likely origin for like HR was probably like the civil rights movement and workman's comp, which were
I feel like I'm sorry. Like if I was to guess, because I remember we did some studying of like modern industry when I was in social studies. Granted, we didn't do a lot of that. I mostly was just complaining about, and this was 2016, mind you.
uh-huh.
Complaining about politics and stuff, which is something I didn't really give a shit about.
Yeah. Which side note, we definitely need to separate social studies from history. If we're gonna still have social studies as a field, which is debatable, I would rather separate it into history and civics again rather than social studies because it very much primes your brain to think in like social justice terms. But yeah, I would say probably that HR has nothing to do or used to have nothing to do with like feminism or social justice. and had more to do with like workmen's compensation, workers' rights, and all that stuff. And that stuff was definitely necessary
Yeah, I was gonna
both
say
now and then. So
I was gonna say like the earliest versions of it probably were like in the early 1900s when industrialization was coming into being and stuff, and when like the unionizing, the unions and stuff started becoming a more thing, and the earliest iterations I think of HR were like the unions and stuff for workers' compensation and stuff like that.
yeah,
And
which even then, that's not such a new concept because you had guilds in the Middle Ages that were basically unions, essentially.
right. So yeah, if anything, like you said, HR was more or less when it first started was about probably work treatment of the workers and also compensation for workers and stuff.
Yeah,
basically like a union under company affiliation, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's evolved into what it is today, which you can argue is good or bad. It really just depends, I guess.
It's not necessarily that there are HR departments that bugs me necessarily. It's what they are operating under, the framework that they're operating under. In the same way that if we had HR departments back in the 19th century that were all ensuring the good Christian name of the company, and it hired a staff priest, I would still be raising my eyebrow and going, I'm sorry, but what the fuck does your abstract morality have to do with anything?
Yep.
Anyway, Macintosh.
Macintosh.
Say, is ours have a salad? Where's my lip gloss? I think this element should be called radium. That last one was Madame Curie. You know what? She was kind of an honorary man. She had a piece made of science.
Okay.
And that is vastly out of context.
Yeah, we got sidetracked from the conversation that Ed sent us down with the whole origin of HR departments thing. And I forgot a point I was going to make last time, but it works equally well here. The reason Shelvin criticizes women for being women is because women are different than men. He is a man, therefore even he with all of his social awkwardness, can understand other men at least a little bit. But the gender and sex difference between men and women is another layer that he has to get through, or that his social awkwardness has to get through. With men, he is still socially awkward, but they are similar to him in the key fact that he is a man. Therefore, he can kind of at least get a perspective of where they're coming from. When faced with women, there is that extra layer, which is why he identifies their womanhood as a problem for him. Not because he hates women, not because he doesn't think of them as human. In point of fact, Sheldon basically hates everyone who isn't Sheldon, if we're being entirely honest, because in addition to him being on the spectrum, he is also an extremely narcissistic person who sees his only value and his only contribution to the world as his intelligence. And given his upbringing, it doesn't surprise me that that's all he sees as valuable. Because he never needed to deal with the emotional side of things. In fact, if anything, he was overexposed from a young age because his family was so simple to emotional reasoning, and that's what made him hyperfixate on being overly rational. Had he been given Leonard's mother, he probably would have reached for more emotional comfort because he would have gotten less of it, and it would have. He essentially learned to view from his down home Texan mom he learned to view other people's emotionality and emotional reasoning as fickle obstacles that get in his way. So his retaliation of that was, I'm going to be as rational as possible, damn the consequences. And being as there's another layer between him and women, it's unsurprising that he would identify the womanness as a problem for him because he can't read people. And you throw in, he can't read anyone, but you throw in another layer like a different race or a different gender, and it makes things more difficult for him. That's why he fixates on what's different from him. It's not hatred, it's not even necessarily a lack of understanding, it's just his brain basically going, I already have difficulty understanding people that are similar to me, and you're throwing in all these other variables that I now have to figure out. What the fuck? But anyway, Macintosh, unless you had something to add, Brainstormer.
No, I'm good. That's pretty much your show for this video, man.
Uh-huh. I think it's partly because I stuck around Big Bang Theory a little longer than I probably should have. I
honestly think if we get to the next one, we'll have more things to say. Honestly.
Mhm.
Anyway, Macintosh.
Macintosh.
Keep us, as the audience, sympathetic to men who behave in such reprehensible ways.
That's it.
Well, it's done by leaning heavily on a combination of ironic humor and a popular writer's trick known as lampshading. Most of the jokes on The Big Bang Theory, such as they are, revolve around the following ironic...
Sorry, I had to pause it. 5 seconds. I want him to finish his point.
Okay, so yeah, Macintosh.
Macintosh.
Revolve around the following ironic hook. Since geeky guys don't fit into the macho mold of what we expect sexism or male entitlement to look like, it's funny to watch them engaging in that type of behavior.
Okay.
No, Macintosh. It's not funny because they are geeky. It's funny because they are relatable, Macintosh. Because the things you call morally reprehensible in this instance are what other people call just goddamn being human. Okay? You may have the social justice equivalent of Puritanism infecting you, but not everyone else is as morally strict as you. Not everyone else goes, won't somebody please think of the women's every time they see someone tell an off-color joke. And the reason we let these guys get away with more in this setting is because we know how non-threatening they are. How many times do all 4 of them, often at once, get beat up by Penny, who is just a woman? Do you not remember the Penny punches Wolowitz in the eye and he wound up with a shiner that would make Rocky Balboa blush? Scene in
She is, I believe she's from
Nebraska.
So, yeah, no, she's and they've actually said it before. They're trailer park trash.
Yeah. But, point being, they are all fair, and here's the thing that's gonna fuck with your head, Macintosh. They are all fairly effeminate as far as like masculine standards go. And yet, when men display feminine tendencies, you call that just another kind of masculinity, and you call it toxic, and you call it a threat to women, despite the fact that you basically display the exact same tendencies, but whatever the fuck. And when men display masculinity, you call it a threat to women. So, to be clear here, Macintosh, you essentially view every method of dealing with the opposite sex that isn't you to be a problem. Because weak, nerdy, effeminate men who are socially awkward and aren't charismatic and that aren't alpha by any stretch of the imagination, that you consider them to be toxic and terrible for displaying the exact same sorts of behavior as women do, and the same qualities as women have. And you view alpha dickheads as dickheads, which is fair. But you view women taking on masculine roles to be liberative and expressive, and no one should be allowed to tell her there's anything whatsoever wrong with that. And you view women being so hyper feminine that it's almost a caricature to be a virtue, because that's embracing their femininity, which is by definition virtuous and pure. So basically, you've set up a situation where no matter what any man does, or wherever any man falls on the masculinity versus femininity spectrum, they're doing something wrong, or potentially doing something wrong. And you set up a situation where no matter where any woman falls the masculinity and femininity spectrum, they can't do anything wrong, and you are a misogynist for insinuating that they could ever. You are a moron, Macintosh, and I'd like to remind you, just for every person who ever watches this, that you, my dear Jonathan Macintosh, are in possession of the dreaded Y chromosome. You are a man, and yet this is your approach to every man who is not you, and also, at least on some level, to you, because I've seen you be guilty around Anita in various clips. So you essentially live in a world where there is a no-win scenario for you unless you stick as strictly as possible to a very rigid, very abstract, very complicated and nonsensical moral ideology. It's basically the equivalent of the old school tradcons going, if you're not a Christian, you can't be moral. That's what you're doing. You're saying if you're not a feminist, then you are by definition everything bad and wrong with the world. It's exactly what the Christians used to do with Christianity. If you don't adhere to my Christian values and my family values, you must be a bad person by default. Well, you're doing that, but with feminism. If you don't adhere to my feminist values, then you must be a bad person by default. Fuck you, Macintosh. And also Macintosh.
Macintosh.
It's anything can happen Thursday. Let's hit the clubs and meet hot women.
Here we go. Lock up your daughters. We're gonna hit it and quit it.
Notice the target of the joke is not the misogynist behavior.
Or we could finish eating and go to the comic book store.
Also a good plan.
Instead, it's
Sorry, again, I just 20 seconds and all.
Right, okay. But, okay, Macintosh. Yes, the misogyny is a part of the joke. Okay, just be clear. Because not even alpha dickheads, for the most part, act like that. For the most part, the alpha dickheads don't feel the need to, because they know they're alpha dickheads. They don't need to be boisterous and overexpressive, because they know they're already by default at the top of the heap. So yes, the exaggerated way in which they're performing it is part of the joke. But also, part of the joke is that they are incompetent and non-threatening. You are trying to get to engage us in moral outrage over behavior that in universe is established as non-threatening. And I will remind you that Penny, a woman, regularly beats these characters up for doing the stupid shit they do, even if it's just verbal shit they say. And I bring that up because that means she is escalating to violence when violence is not on offer. Also, this, and again, is going to fuck with your head. Penny is the most masculine character in the main cast of The Big Bang Theory. She is the down home, tough girl that is masculine by comparison to a bunch of effeminate, nerdy city guys. That's part of the joke. And yet you don't criticize Penny for internalizing masculine tendencies, despite the fact that you are very much saying in this video, even if a guy isn't masculine, even if he doesn't display any traditional masculinity whatsoever and is directly counter to it, that will also be a type of masculinity and will also be a problem, but only when men do it. And all the times when Penny ogles a man like they're a piece of meat, or all the time she has dated a macho dickhead because for no other reason than because he is traditionally masculine, we're not allowed to judge her for that decision. We're not even allowed to find it appalling that she dates, the likes of Kurt and Zach, who I believe were her two main macho guy boyfriends throughout the series, while simultaneously using the affections of all of these nerdy guys to get what she wants. Meanwhile, even when the guys are so incompetent at being alpha that it's laughable, you still want us to be morally threatened by them. You see how puritanical you're being. Even when there is no chance whatsoever that these characters will be successful at the thing they're doing, we're still supposed to be appalled by the thing they're doing, even if they're only doing it jokingly, and even if they only did it once and then immediately cringed away from it. Dickhead. Macintosh.
Macintosh.
Making fun of men who are not traditionally masculine enough to believably pull it off.
Smell that? That's the smell of new comic books.
Unlike many of our earlier examples from the 1980s, the creepy behavior on The Big Bang Theory is meant to be understood for what it is.
I know you think you're some sort of smooth-talking ladies' man.
You are literally showing the scene that is the exact counter-argument to all of your bullshit. The characters in universe are calling these characters out on what they're doing, particularly Howard, because he is by far the worst offender of them in this regard. And once again, I need to remind you, at the end of this scene, he gets the shit kicked out of him.
It's a different one.
Okay, well, in any regard, this is like the third time or something that this has happened to Howard alone, let alone Raj, who can barely even speak to women, but that's, neither here nor there. And yes, I know they fixed it later on, but it kind of ruined his character, but that's neither. I'm not here to defend Big Bang Theory. I'm here to defend Big Bang Theory from the stupid shit you are throwing at it, because rather than make legitimate criticisms of Big Bang Theory, Macintosh, all you did was create a video saying this isn't morally pure enough for my ideology. It's the equivalent of 1 million moms going, this isn't good Christian content, or this isn't a good Christian movie, or whatever the fuck. Yeah, no. Unless you happen to be a evangelical Christian, you don't need to give a fuck what the evangelical Christian perspective of a given kind of entertainment is. And unless you are a dyed-in-the-wool social justice feminist, you don't need to give a fuck about the feminist perspective of these things. Because the feminist perspective, much like the Christian perspective, does not need to hold any sway over you unless you ascribe to that morality. And even then, there are variations on these ideas that you don't need to go full moralistic twat in order to allow for. Like the feminist equivalent of this would be Christina Hoff Sommers or Camille Paglia or Warren Farrell, and the Christian equivalent, just for balance, I'm going to give an example of you could be a Unitarian Universalist or a Quaker or something. They hardly ever moralize. They really are mostly about the love thy neighbor, turn the other cheek bullshit. But yeah, you're not advocating for the softcore Christina Hoff Sommers version of this Macintosh. You are honestly gonna go, won't somebody please think of the children, or won't somebody please think of the sitcom audience in this case? And you don't see any irony in the fact that you do this, but if anyone did this from a more traditionalistic perspective, you would call it a symptom of patriarchy and everything you need to fight against.
So you weren't kidding. About the whole, sneezing when I didn't expect it.
Yeah. It always happens. It never comes out when you want it to come out. It only ever comes out when it's inconvenient or frustrating for it to.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Anyway. Macintosh.
Macintosh.
But the truth is, you are just pathetic and creepy.
And this is where ironic lampshading comes in.
So what are you saying?
Which is when media makers deliberately call attention to a dissonant or overly cliched aspect of their own production. Rather than writing better, different punchlines, writers attempt to duck.
Sorry, 20 seconds. Let me back that up a bit.
All right.
Let me play that out. So,
Shade aspect of their own production. Rather than writing better, different punchlines, writers attempt to duck any potential criticism by pointing out the sexism inherent in their own jokes themselves.
Pause it. That's it. Confirmed. We now have the address of the top model house. Okay, for the record, what you guys are doing is really creepy.
This isn't some writing trick to dodge criticism, Macintosh. It's called straight manning. This is as old as vaudeville and probably significantly before that. When you have one character in a scene doing absurd shit, you often have the straight man, which has nothing to do with sexuality before you go there. It's just in relation to the curvature of the scene, basically, because a crazy person distorts things out of whack, and then the straight man comes in and acts as the straight contrast to the curved situation. But yeah, this isn't some kind of moral admonition of guilt, Macintosh. This is as old as comedy itself, because in order to make an observation about something, you have to often present some kind of dialogue on it. This is as old as fucking Socrates and Plato, even as far outside of comedy as you want to go. This is why in things like Plato's Republic and the adjoining dialogues, you have Socrates encounter different characters who represent different arguments for various positions on topics. Because in order to make the point clear or give space for the audience to come to their own conclusions, you need to differentiate between the absurd thing that the absurd character is doing and the hard and fast literalist straight man point of view. And somewhere between the absurd character and the straight man character is to be found the complexity of some semblance of reality or logic. It's not even meta. It's just an old comedy trick that makes it easier to understand the parameters of the characters often. Now, sometimes it is meta, especially in sitcoms, because there is, that fourth wall there, especially with the alleged audience there. But that's often more, again, similar to what people do in real life with bantering. One person says something silly, one person plays the straight man, or vice versa. And then we learn more about the characters as a result. Macintosh.
You know what? If it's creepy to use the internet, military satellites, and robot aircraft to find a house full of gorgeous young models so that I can drop in on them unexpectedly, then fine, I'm creepy.
Yes, the joke there is that he is well thought out enough to accurately describe what he is doing, but has a blind spot large enough that he doesn't understand what's wrong with that. That's the joke. It's essentially a joke about how people get fixated on different ideas or topics. When you're in the throes of an idea, a really, really creative or really, really passionate idea, you often lose sight of the world around you. So much so that you might lose sight of the obvious fact that this idea has a massive flaw in it, which is why it's a good idea to workshop ideas and to expose ideas to as many minds as possible. Because that way someone can catch the stupid flaw in your idea before you engage in the absurd behavior.
Yep.
Macintosh.
Macintosh.
This technique of making something super obvious to viewers is meant to let us know that the writers are self-aware, and to make us feel like we're all in on the joke. Most comedy writers know that retrograde-style bigotry is no longer acceptable on primetime television. But many of them still want to use sexist,
I'm sorry. The fact that you're using I don't. I'm trying to fuck. I know his name. I just can't remember it. Fuck. You know, one of the old classic black and white silent film vaudevillian dudes. Not
Charlie-
Buster-
Charlie Chaplin?
Charlie Chaplin. Thank you. When explaining lamp shading, is just. I'm sorry. It bugs me.
Yeah. Apparently now, even Charlie Chaplin is morally impure.
Well, no, it's just like to describe or like a visual, but still, like.
And it kind of throws his argument under the bus. If he's using Charlie Chaplin as a modern example of bigotry not being okay anymore.
Never seen The Dictator.
Huh?
Never seen The Dictator.
Well, that, but also, if Charlie Chaplin is an example of when Hollywood learned that bigotry isn't okay anymore, then you've just unraveled your own bullshit, because that means that we learned this kind of shit wasn't okay anymore back in the 30s. And also, Macintosh, what you seem to be misunderstanding is the reason racist and sexist jokes work half the time is not because the audience is in on the racism. It's because they understand that racism and sexism are shocking, uncouth things. And oftentimes, when you make a racist or sexist joke, what's being mocked is racism itself. And for someone who believes as firmly as you do, Macintosh, that people's culture dictates people's ideas, you seem to completely gloss over the prospect of the idea that part of the reason we came to this conclusion that racism and sexism are bad is because of comedy routines mocking the shit out of the stupidity of racism and sexism. You know, like vaudeville did, like films and television going back to basically the beginnings of film and television did. For as long as this medium of artistic expression has existed, certain people have been making jokes of, see, look how stupid racism and sexism are as concepts. Aren't they so short-sighted and stupid and shocking when you lay them out flat like that? And if people have been aware of that since the beginnings of the medium of film and television, what does that tell you about our culture, Macintosh? Because it tells me that if artists existed back in the 30s that were willing to make jokes at the expense of racism and sexism, that racism and sexism have for at least that long been viewed as something that we should get rid of, and people taking active measures to do exactly that. Unfortunately, however, because stupid people do exist, and people who don't understand human nature do exist, there will always be a certain proportion of idiots that will make those kind of jokes. And so, for as long as there are those kind of idiots who believe in those ideas, you will have ideas or you will have jokes mocking those ideas. That's why there are still those kind of jokes in things like the Big Bang Theory and so on. And also, here's the other rub. When you are close to someone, you lower your filter. Or at least most people, when they are close to someone, lower their filter quite a bit more than they would around other people they don't trust. That's a part of the intimacy of friendship. You say things to your best friends that you wouldn't get away with saying to normal people because you don't trust normal people. You don't have that level of connection with normal people. But you, Macintosh, view people bantering back and forth down at the pub or on the couch playing video games as immoral and they should stop it. And this is exactly the point at which me and the rest of the world get off your train because you want to police what people can think and say in the privacy of their own homes, words, and thoughts if you have your way. And that, my dear Macintosh, is fully automatic moral totalitarianism. Thank you very fucking much. You do not have a right to tell people what they may say in private. You do not even have a right to tell people what they may say in public, quite frankly. And you definitely do not have a right to say to people what they may say to those they have intimate friendship or otherwise relationships to, or what they can think in the privacy of their own thoughts when they're unfiltered. You evil cunt. Macintosh. And I think Brainstormer left while I was ranting. So I will check the
I'm
chat.
back. Yeah, I'm back. I was re-dampening the rag.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You should get an ice pack or something. That would probably be easier.
We actually had those, but I don't know where those are anymore. I think we lost them or threw them out. I'm not entirely sure.
Uh-huh.
I think they got old and cracked.
Ah.
Yeah. Like rectangle plastic ones. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know. Yep.
Used to use it a lot when I got like injured or something.
Well, given that story you told me about the dog mauling, that
Oh no,
doesn't
I
surprise
didn't
me.
use it for those. No, like when I was like I sprained something. Anyway,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I got nothing to really say. I think I just, yeah, like I said, this is kind of more your video than mine.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, let's move this back a bit. Let's just put 20. Oh, that's okay. Macintosh.
Macintosh.
Many of them still want to use sexist, racist, and homophobic jokes as an easy way to get cheap laughs.
Actually, Indie Monopoly is just like regular, except the money's in rupees. Instead of hotels, you build call centers. And when you pick a chance card, you might die of dysentery.
Ironic lampshading provides a clever way for them to keep getting away with it.
Okay, may I say something? Because I know you probably have another long rant to go with this one.
Please.
It might cover the same thing, honestly.
Mhm.
Howard and Raj are best friends within the group. Ah, crap.
Yep.
And here's the thing about best friends, which I'm gonna go on a limb here and say, Mr. Macintosh, you probably don't know what a best friend is, so you don't really know how a dynamic between the best friends work, which is fine. And I'm sorry that you don't have one, but speaking as the best friend to Dalton, or at least I hope so. He's not really gonna.
Uh-huh. You're definitely on that list.
Yeah.
And someday I hope to get all of my best friends from all of the various places I've been together so that they can hang out. Because I think that you meeting my friend Nick, the sociopathic one that I have the arguments about destroying humanity with, would be the most hilarious thing ever.
Right. Yes, that's my point. Best friends banter and make fun of each other constantly. Like the fact that Dalton says a lot of racist shit to me, and I make jokes on his behalf as well.
Yeah. The
Um,
the jokes about Brainstormer when he goes to eat something that's vaguely like Mexican stereotyped, and then I start giggling, or the jokes about how I am breakable and could easily be basically stepped on like a bug, are kind of the bread and butter of our friendship, or at least the way we regularly banter with each other. In fact,
Like-
someone should do me a favor and like what once we actually develop a large enough audience, somebody should get like a compilation of all of the we banter, us bantering with each other compilations.
yeah. But yeah, like friends make fun of each other because one, they're close enough to do that, and two, both, like I said, to add on, are close enough to each other to know when they're actually being serious to one another, and when they make fun of each other, it really is just that. It's making fun of each other. It's just having a good old time, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
though,
And
granted,
all, go ahead.
insults are a thing. And again, like it can be lighthearted from one person, as it's kind of shown in this clip, I suppose. But it's like it's just what best friends do. Like, well,
Uh-huh. And also to piggyback off of what Brainstormer is saying, Raj comes from India, and one of his defining character traits is that he does not like the place he comes from, that he finds it backwards and barbaric. And often the people making the most strident jokes about Jews and or Hindus in this show are Howard and Raj respectively. The person you will find making the worst jokes on the behalf of Jews is himself Jewish. And the person who viscerally hates India with a passion is the Indian guy. It's called self-awareness. Sometimes it's made because there are genuinely parts of that culture that the people making the jokes don't find preferable. And sometimes it's this thing we call being able to be self-depreciating and laugh at yourself. Like I have no problem when Brainstormer makes the he could break me jokes because that is objectively true, and I have no problem both knowing that and finding that funny. Just as when I make jokes about Brainstormer accidentally getting shot because he lives in the inner city, I'm sure Brainstormer doesn't have a problem with that because he can see a situation where that might conceivably happen.
I don't leave my house often.
Yeah. So,
Granted, I made the joke that I technically live in the white ghetto, so it's less.
yeah, it's less likely to happen, and thank God, because I would hate to miss
Yeah, it's
one of my.
weird. Like it's kind of suburban, but also kind of. I mean, like it's literally right downtown, like a couple blocks. You're like right on the main road of the city.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but yeah, Macintosh. Not only are you making it next to impossible for regular humans to relate to each other in this paradigm, you are also making it impossible for a person to internalize something about themselves and not be able to examine or find things funny about themselves. The first thing you have to understand, Macintosh, in order to be a mature human being, is that you are not perfect. Okay? You are not a moral exemplar all the time and in every circumstance. You have flaws and parts of yourself that you cannot change that are worth mocking, both by yourself and by other people. If you have a problem with the racism of Howard and Raj to themselves and each other, or would call it internalized depression or some shit about them making jokes about themselves, you are ignoring two things. You are ignoring that, number one, sometimes jokes are funny because they are true. Or stereotypes are funny because there is at least a kernel of truth to them. And number two, you are taking away people's ability to laugh at themselves. And if you take away a person's ability to laugh at their own flaws or shortcomings, you will cause them to have a depression. Because sometimes people use humor as a defense mechanism to avoid crippling depression. Hi. So my question is this. How many Jewish people do you suppose are willing to make Jewish jokes? And if you told them that they had internalized self-hatred for that, would spiral into a depression? Because, I mean, not to beat on the Jew drum too long, because that would make it a very awkward situation. But Bill Maher, Jon Stewart, Woody Allen. Not only are a lot of Jewish comedians able to make Jewish jokes, and not only is it some of their funniest material, but it's also often a majority of their act. You take Jewish jokes away from Bill Maher and Jon Stewart, you will rob them of their jobs as comedians, good sir. And given that they have the Jewish perspective, surely the people most qualified to make criticisms of the Jewish identity are themselves Jewish, by your own logic. And given, for example, that I am gay and crippled, if I make a disability joke or a gay joke, then I must know what the fuck I'm talking about, mustn't I? Because I have that life experience and all. Suddenly, when it comes to self-depreciation and self-awareness, your understanding of standpoint theory, a theory that you yourself hold to, goes out the fucking window. Because you can't see anyone's point of view as a reason to lighten the fuck up and get over your hyper-strict self-serious morality. You can only see it when it makes your morality even more strict and censorious, Macintosh. That's the problem. Because rather than let bygones be bygones and let the reins of civilization loose a little bit and let people have fun within the parameters of your system, you have to be hyper strict and hyper moralistic and hyper sensitive about every little thing, because if you don't, you feel like you can't control the universe and you feel like you have no power in the universe. Well, Macintosh, most people, when they want to feel competent and powerful in the universe, get skills. They don't moralize, they get good at shit. Try getting good at shit instead of moralizing. It will do wonders for you. Trust me, Macintosh. But anyway, moving forward. Macintosh.
Way for them to keep getting away with it.
Just FYI, that was racist.
Now, the problem with this comedic device is that by itself,
Hey, why am I in charge of phone support? Seems a bit racist.
it doesn't critique or challenge sexism, homophobia, or racism. It simply acknowledges it in a humorous way.
Yeah, it's called. What? Damn it! I lost the word. Fuck. You mentioned it. Self something.
Self-deprecation.
Yes, and also, I mean, characters can be aware. I mean, like, how many times do people point out shit they're doing in just average day?
Yeah. Also, once again, Macintosh, just because someone is not using their joke to essentially be an activist doesn't mean that that joke does not undermine the subject matter of the joke. Because, Macintosh, mockery exists. When you show someone to be a racist and then you mock them within the context of the joke. You don't need to spend a dissertation-sized paragraph explaining why racism is bad and terrible and how we should undermine it. The fact that it's being mocked is often enough, because mockery deflates the authority and the seriousness and the weight of a concept. That's why things like Mel Brooks, The Producers, is funny, because it mocks Nazis, and Nazis were a bunch of self-serious dickheads with stupid, short-sighted beliefs that deserve to be mocked and don't deserve to be a specter of doom for the remainder of human history. And much in the same way, racism and sexism are stupid fucking ideas that deserve to be mocked so that they no longer have the power to be these threatening specters forever hanging over our heads like the sword of freaking Damocles. Okay? You might be fine living under a system where everyone is morally afraid and morally outraged at all times by all things and in all circumstances, but some of us would prefer a world and would even consider it a utopia if we could all just get the fuck over these things. And we could laugh at them in the same way we laugh now at people who thought the world was flat at one point. Okay?
Yeah, those people are idiots.
Yeah, because that is the level of stupidity you have to be a sexist or a racist, genuinely. And it is the level of stupidity you have to be to fall for Nazism, because these are stupid fucking ideas and they deserve to be mocked so that they no longer have the power to engage anyone's moral outrage, because they shouldn't matter, because they didn't matter to begin with. And the only reason we think they matter is because a bunch of really stupid people got really stupid ideas in their heads and did really stupid and destructive shit with it.
Right. Okay. So I'm looking at the time right now, and Dylan and I have had a discussion about this. I've mentioned this pretty much every fucking stream for the last, I don't know, month or two.
Mm-hmm.
I have a terrible sleep schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to maybe around, I don't know, 11:30, maybe 12. We are going to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that just depends where we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully we get this video done. We can start a little bit on the next one, and then we can just call it.
Yep.
Okay. Shall we, Macintosh?
We shall Macintosh.
Right.
Also, I don't know if Ed said anything in the chat, but my little red icon is saying that someone said something in the chat.
It might be private chat, actually.
Okay, let me actually go and fix that then. Okay, yeah, it went away. So yeah, it was the private chat.
Yeah, I wrote
Okay.
RB, which.
Yep, Macintosh.
Yeah, Macintosh.
Oh, very clever, but still racist. Duly noted, Steve from Wichita.
Acknowledging bigotry is not the same thing as critiquing bigotry, especially when the punchlines end up making light of serious social issues like sexual harassment.
Dr. Cooper, you said things to your employee that you just cannot say in the workplace.
Okay, Macintosh. Here is the thing. To bring up a concept as absurd and stupid in the context of humor is, in and of itself, a critique, because mockery deflates the seriousness and authority of concepts. And yes, Macintosh, it does make light of these things, because these things are stupid and absurd, and no reasonably thinking person should be engaging with them. By hyperinflating the seriousness of a given subject, all you do is give it power to harm you, to guilt trip you, to psychologically damage you, to moralize you. All of that is what you get when you get moralizing twits like you saying saying we should treat everything with a ludicrous degree of moralistic self-seriousness, that is what happens. When you get Mel Brookses of the Mel Brookses of the world going, let's mock Nazis because the Nazis were morons and they did stupid things in the name of a very, very stupid ideology, that takes power away from things like Nazism. And you feel compelled to defend human resources, Macintosh, because most human resources departments operate under your moral framework. But here's the thing, Macintosh. Your moral framework is also not above criticism. And the fact that you think it should be above criticism, and you think that the things you call your devil, sexism, racism, sexual harassment, all that nonsense, the fact that you think that the things you call devil shouldn't be mocked because it somehow gives that idea power rather than deflating it like every other kind of mockery in the universe, means you are an evil cunt. This is like a Christian saying, you can't talk about Satan in your jokes because that will give Satan power somehow. You see how stupid that is, right? Mocking the devil pisses the devil off because the devil would prefer being powerful and a specter that you spend your whole life trying to avoid. But if you mock the devil so much so that he's nothing more than a joke character, I would imagine that would piss the devil off something fierce. Much in the same way as a lot of things got banned in Nazi Germany, not because they were pro-Jew or anything, but because Hitler saw they were mocking him or belittling him or in other ways undermining his authority and his validity, and he didn't like that, so he called it pro-Jew, or he thought that the only reason someone would criticize him is if they were pro-Jew, because he was that fucked out in the head and believed that everyone was either with him or against him. That's what you're doing right now, Macintosh. You're saying either you cater to every whim of social justice or you are against me and everything I believe, and that makes you a bad person. Which does, ironically enough, Macintosh, make you similar to Hitler, at least in that regard. And yes, I did just break Godwin's law into a million pieces because you are being an evil cunt and a moron, just like Hitler was being, just not to the same degree because you can't convince a million people to do your bidding for you. You have to make YouTube videos like this one to try and sell your bullshit. You can't just write Jonathan McIntosh's social justice equivalent of Mein Kampf and then get people to genuinely believe your bullshit. You have to do this, and then you can't even get that far.
Okay, so Ed Brewer said, I hope this Macintosh dude hears this. I doubt it. Honestly, the dude doesn't like hearing criticism. People like that don't really like hearing criticism of other things. So
this is also a pretty old video, so I doubt he'll respond to it if he even does hear it. But yeah, I live in hope that someday some of these people will stumble on these. Hopefully after they have gotten rid of these stupid ideas and then go, yeah, I can see why I was being dumb. But let's be fair, I swear a lot because the stupidity pisses me off, and also because it makes for snappier, more interesting rhetoric, which means that they probably won't listen to me even if they do stumble on it, because you used a naughty word and you sounded like you were angry at me, therefore none of your argument could possibly have validity. Derp. Yeah, and that's exactly the mentality that's the problem, because you'd rather deal with the way the argument is phrased rather than the way the substance of the actual argument.
Anyway, Macintosh?
Macintosh.
Oh, I see the confusion here. No, Alex thought I was singling her out. No, I meant that all women are slaves to their biological urges, even you.
So while it's true, the message of the Big Bang Theory isn't sexism is super cool.
What kind of media would possibly give that message, Macintosh? There is no such media. None. No, at least not in the first the first world or the Western world. does any media say such a thing? And even the allegedly sexist media in other countries is sexist usually for what they consider to be benevolent reasons. Now they are wrong and they are short-sighted because as we just went over, in Muslim countries, most of the quote-unquote misogynistic problems they have over there come from the desire of those men to protect their women so much that they can't let them be free. It's your safety is so important to me that I can't let you have these freedoms. Which is not misogyny by definition because it has nothing to do with hating women. It has to do with wanting to protect women, which is the exact opposite of misogyny. Thank you very fucking much. Yeah, no media anywhere, Macintosh, has the sexism and racism are cool message. Well, racism maybe. If you're on the Daily Stormer, you might get a political cartoon trying to make that work. But as we all know, jokes made by morons are almost never funny because they almost never speak to any legitimate truth. And very often, jokes are funny because they're true. So if you can't tell a joke with some semblance of truth to it, the joke bombs. Because jokes are very similar to philosophy in that way. The point of comedians is essentially to draw attention to something that doesn't make sense. But if the thing they're drawing attention to did make sense or does make sense, the joke bombs. Because it didn't do what comedy is supposed to fucking do. Macintosh.
Macintosh.
Relax, no one's going to be looking at her hair.
I'd argue the implications are much more troubling, because the show's message is more akin to sexism is mostly harmless. And especially when that sexism is coming from geeky guys.
There are pitfalls. Just
Yeah. This is your problem. Your problem is we don't take these problems seriously enough. It doesn't even occur to you that part of the way that we get rid of these problems is by mocking them so much that even morons get it through their heads that these ideas are stupid and shouldn't be used. That's another thing that comedy does. It breaks down complex concepts into very simple terms. So even the backwoods, Joannes and Cletuses of the world can get it through their heads. And given that the people most likely to engage in these stupid ideas are relatively stupid people, putting it in terms as simple and appealing as possible will make these things go away, at least a little bit. Because if you can convince the stupid people the stupid ideas in their heads are stupid, they will try to avoid them. And then, boom, we will have a world that contains less sexism and racism. Because we will have a world in which everyone, even the stupid, understand that those ideas are stupid. That, to me, sounds like win state. But you want everything to be self-serious. Everything needs to be forever under your moral thumb. And every religion needs a devil. And, Macintosh, your devil is sexism and racism and prejudice. So you need the devil to be scary, which means you need racism and sexism and prejudice to be scary. So you pump it up with so much fear and so much moralizing that people are crippled by fear, and then you wonder why these forces have such a vast impact on the world. Whereas someone like Mel Brooks looks at those things, mocks them mercilessly to the point they are irrelevant jokes, and you wonder how the hell did he manage to make it go away? Well, you see, Macintosh, if you don't want something to have power over you, it is crucially important that you not give it power over you. And if you want something to become less powerful, you have to engage in processes to take that power away from the thing. And you do that in terms of ideas using mockery. if you can't mock something, then it probably means it has some level of legitimacy. Whereas if you can easily mock something, then it clearly has no legitimacy to begin with. That is what you could call the ethics of comedy, if you want to call it that. Moving on.
Macintosh.
Me, I know. When it comes to sexual harassment law, I'm a bit of a self-taught expert.
Adorkable misogyny is presented as just another socially awkward personality quirk, as something that's perhaps deserving of an eye roll or an exasperated look, or maybe some lighthearted chiding.
Yes, Macintosh. You know that mockery is a negative thing. You want to know how I know? Because if someone mocks a nerdy girl to the point that she commits suicide, you will make the argument that I just made, that mockery invalidates something and takes power away from it and makes it less powerful or less valid. You know how mockery works, because when mockery does actually have negative consequences, you're the first person to say we shouldn't mock X because mockery removes power from that thing. But when it comes to mocking your devil, the thing you need to believe in because you need it to be scary, because you need a reason to force your morality down everyone's throats and for everyone else to accept that morality. Because you need that to be scary, you can't let people mock racism and sexism and prejudice of various different kinds. Because if Christians started mocking hell, they might not listen to the church fathers when the church father tells them to do something really, really dumb. And if people start mocking racism and sexism, they might no longer need you and your sorry moralistic ass. And we can't have that, because that would imply that everyone else is just as moral as you, and you aren't the one good, virtuous, pure, moral person in the universe. And you get off. You validate your own ego by assuming that you know something everyone else doesn't already at least intuitively know. You assume you are better than other people, morally speaking. Well, you're not, Macintosh. We've known that racism and sexism and tribalism are bad for centuries, and we've been mocking them for centuries. And the only people who have gotten in the way of that is people like you on the right and the left who can't put down their morality and can't stop from loading their moral gun and shoving it in everyone's face. Put down the weapon, and maybe people will stop going to war with you, Macintosh. Because most people would rather just get on with their shit and have fun and meaningful and pleasant lives, if at all possible.
Right, okay, so Ed Brewer, wasn't the show written by woke Hollywood folks? Is this dude trying to out-woke the woke?
No, he essentially just thinks they're not woke enough.
Of course they don't. Of course he does.
It's like an evangelical Christian looking at a moderate Christian and going, "You're not Christian enough because you think it's okay for gay people to get married or some shit."
Okay, so I haven't had that yet, so can't confirm.
Yeah, and I hope you never do, because those conversations are always annoying. But you know,
It's not really a
whatever.
conversation. It's more like the idiot yelling at me as I'm walking away. So
Yeah, the lecture.
yeah. Anyway, Macintosh.
Macintosh.
But never as something to be taken seriously or seriously challenged.
Well,
Yes, because it's a stupid concept, and we shouldn't entertain concepts that are that stupid. Or if we do, we should do so in an intellectual manner and not oh, won't somebody please think of the children? My God, the sky is falling. We all need to cock to a morality or we're all going to die manner. That level of hysteria is counterproductive in almost every circumstance, Macintosh.
All right.
Yeah.
Probably should have let that finish, but earlier. But okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
Macintosh.
You're engaged to my friend.
Hey, Bernadette doesn't mind where I get my motor running as long as I park in the right garage.
I can't believe you're engaged to my friend.
At its core, the adorable misogynist trope is built around the old axiom.
Boys will be boys. That's what I was gonna say. But again,
Oh god. I'm gonna go plug in my phone because I just got the little battery timer warning thing.
okay.
I will be back in just a second. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes it makes me think maybe you should try just charging it beforehand, like at 100%.
It had a full battery when I joined the call. It's just that StreamYard eats the battery.
Right. Totally forgot about that. Sorry.
Yeah, StreamYard hates smartphones and will eat the battery of any given smartphone.
It's a good thing I got a computer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You got anything to say?
But yeah, let's just let him finish because I can see the boys will be boys thing coming too, and yeah, this whole thing.
All right.
Macintosh.
That boys will be boys. And what that phrase really means is boys will be sexist, or boys will be creepy stalkers who sexually harass women, as the case may be. On the very rare occasions when one of the geeks is called out for his sexism, the audience is meant to feel bad for him because his feelings got hurt.
Boys will be boys is literally the only phrase we have to excuse the eccentricities of male behavior.
Right. May I just cut in for a quick sec?
Mm-hmm.
As a man, a boy, as you would say, we're fucking idiots. Like, legitimately, we're really fucking stupid. I mean, watch all the videos online of, like, like the dudes getting hurt, like trying to do something cool. How many of them are actually chicks? How many times a woman gets hurt doing something stupid?
Well, I'll disagree with you a little bit in this regard because
on a ratio, how often?
I see your point, and your point being that it's almost always men doing stupid, bullshit, risky behavior.
However, I want to mention this again. That's more on the kind of physical dumbass ratio, which I've actually done myself when I was younger.
And also the psychological thing of men are more likely to do risk-taking behavior.
Right. And not, you gotta give me a pass on this one, Dalton. Specifically white guys.
Well, it's because white people in the first world tend to be raised in more sheltered and opulent lifestyles, and therefore they get bored easily and need to introduce chaos into their lives.
Don, as a white guy, can you answer this question for me? Why the fuck do you guys have such death wishes? Seriously.
You might be barking up the wrong tree here because, what with me being 5'6" and brittle, I've never felt the need to engage in that bullshit. I'm the guy standing in the corner smirking while everyone else does the stupid bullshit and probably maybe recording it sometimes.
Yeah, no, just seriously, guys are dumbasses. Like, even like super geniuses are dumbasses.
Yeah. But, okay. In response to Brainstormer's point, though, I just want to throw this out there. I think the reason why you see less women in the physically stupid videos is because the way that female stupidity works is a little bit different from the way male stupidity works. The closest equivalent to the guys, doing stupid tricks with tractors and plowing them into each other and bullshit kind of videos, or the guys skydiving off the roof kind of bullshit,
or the
is
or the rakes nut shots. God, those nut shot videos always get me, man.
yeah, the whole that whole clusterfuck of qu'est-ce bullshit, all of that. The equivalent to that for women is the Karen videos, is the Big Red videos, because generally speaking, women have always been in charge of the social pecking order, the interpersonal social pecking order, of the homestead and the community and all those things. So women's stupidity or women's short-sightedness takes the form of moralistic lecturing, and may I speak with the manager, and I'm reading fuckface, and all of those things. Your Karens, your Big Reds, your Trigglypuffs, all of those famous types of people. That's what happens when a woman's stupidity manifests itself, because men and women are psychologically different. So our stupidities are functionally different. When a man's stupidity manifests itself, it manifests itself in the form of, let's do this extremely stupid, risky thing because I'm bored, and it'll be thrilling and it'll get my adrenaline pumping. When women do extremely risky and stupid shit, it's, let's make a public spectacle of morally shaming this guy because women are in charge of the social pecking order, and I am the alpha bitch in this situation. That's the difference. It's not that women don't engage in stupidity. It's that male stupidity and female stupidity are different, so they express themselves differently.
Fair enough. But again, I will say, on a scale, guys are probably more stupider than women in terms of physical stupidity.
Yeah, definitely in terms of physical stupidity, I would say. Also, an important factor to bring up here, there are two bell curves when it comes to male and female intelligence. But something interesting about the bell curves is, even though they line up, so they're the same shape and the same distribution, the distribution actually is not the same, because what you have is men tend to cluster around the extremes. You have more men that are extremely stupid and more men that are geniuses, and fewer men in the middle. Whereas with women, you have more women in the middle of the spectrum and fewer women at the ends of the extremes of morons and geniuses. So more women actually are of average intelligence, and more men are both morons and geniuses than are average, generally.
Brewer says men are at the tippy top and the lowest low. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
That's what I was saying.
But seriously, no, we are fucking stupid.
Yeah, and yeah,
granted, that can be argued for pretty much all of humanity, but men specifically, like the very
our stupidity tends to be a little bit more costly for ourselves, because when Jim and Bob decide to race go-karts into each other to see what happens, and they both die in the fiery explosion that results from it, that's a little bit more costly. Whereas when a woman does something stupid and costly, it's more likely to cost other people, because when a woman gets on her high horse and wants to do a stupid thing, it takes the form of, oh, I saw, Bob and Jim kissing, so they must be gay, so let's lynch them. Or, oh, I had sex with Jamal and then regretted it, so he raped me, so let's lynch him, or something like that.
Okay, you really go fucking dark with this shit.
Yeah, I would, it's just pointing out with like comparable levels of stupidity. Like men are more likely to inflict harm on themselves and the people around them. Women are almost equally likely to inflict their stupidity on others by even just as a minor example, when Karen goes up and talks to the manager, she gets people fired. And if she gets people fired extremely enough, often enough, they wind up homeless. Whereas she can go on about her day being a Karen for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
There's less risk of direct bodily harm when a woman does her version of stupidity than there is with men.
All right. Shall we?
Yeah. Oh wait, I didn't even get to respond to the boys will be boys thing because you completely you sidetracked me with the
Sorry, no, my bad.
No, it's fine. It was a worthwhile sidebar, I think, but I had a point that I wanted to make about the boys will be boys thing. Macintosh. Boys will be boys is literally the only permissive phrase we have for men. And here's the other thing. Boys will be boys has an age limit because if a 25-year-old makes the same mistake as a 5-year-old, or if a 35-year-old makes the same mistake as a 25-year-old, he is not let off the hook with the boys will be boys bullshit. Even now, with when men enter college, they're even when they're in their free-spirited, I'm gonna do whatever I want because I'm basically immortal because youth, yay phase. If a athletic scholarship kid is banging a girl at a party, and she decides the next day that she didn't enjoy herself and accuses him of rape, he's probably going to juvie if he's under 18, and more likely going to be tried as an adult and thrown in prison. No judge has ever said boys will be boys to a sexual assault allegation or a rape case. What is normally said, or what boys will be boys is normally said in response to, is children playing or doing stupid things because they don't know any better. And I stress children being the operative word because, as we just went over, it doesn't even work it doesn't even work when you're in your 20s and you do stupid shit because you're in your 20s anymore. And it's never pertained to anything relating to sex. We never say boys will be boys in response to sexual assault, rape, or even making someone uncomfortable in like a romantic or social setting. If you besmirch the honor of a woman, you are within a good shot of getting beat up by her older brother or her friends, even if you don't do anything criminally actionable. Or, you might be escorted out of the club by the bouncer if you just bump into her the wrong way. We don't say boys will be boys around sexual or romantic shit. We say boys will be boys around, when little Timmy decides to race his dump truck, his remote controlled dump truck off the roof to see what happens and then breaks it, or comes home covered in mud because he was playing in the rain all day or some shit. That's the kind of shit we say boys will be boys in response to. We don't say boys will be boys in response to serious things. And your insinuation that we do apply the boys will be boys standard to anything relating to sex and romance is frankly laughable, because that is the number. Okay, I'm gonna go on a dark sidebar here, but it needs to be done because otherwise Macintosh will not get the point. What is the second worst crime you can have committed against you? We all know the first one is murder. The second worst crime you can commit against a person, as everyone knows in the first world and elsewhere, because even the Puritans and the extreme Muslims know this, is rape. If you are caught in a situation that even looks like rape, you will have the book thrown at you unless you have a very, very strong case in your defense. And even sometimes, if you get off in the official court, you might not get off in the court of public opinion. And as we just covered, you might get the shit beat out of you because some people think that you did do it, even if you didn't. And also, we very rarely, if ever, allow for the possibility of men being victims of such things, but that's a different conversation. So yeah, Macintosh, you can take this boys will be boys as applied to sexual situations bullshit and shove it up your ass. Moving on. Macintosh.
Yep, one sec. Yep, okay. Macintosh.
On television, men's feelings and bruised egos are nearly always depicted as more important than women's comfort or women's safety.
Okay, look, Howard, I just want to apologize.
The adorable misogyny of the four main characters on The Big Bang Theory is tolerant.
Before you.
What world are you living in? Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's just like something like to provide context within the show.
Mm-hmm.
Penny apologizing to Howard. I think it's she lays into him and shit, and there are points where yes, you can point out a person's flaws, but there's also a thing where you can go too far and point out their flaws to the point where point out a person's flaws and help them realize their flaws and try to make them better. That's one thing. But point out their flaws to such a degree in a way that comes off super, I want to say, I'm trying to think of the word here. It's not aggressive.
Confrontational?
Okay, let's just go with that because I can't think of the word. And can have debilitating effects on a person's psyche. And instead of trying to help them better themselves, actually goes the opposite route, which what we saw with Howard looked like he was pretty much in a fucking depressive state.
Yeah.
And it just kind of shows like Penny had no tact at that point, which could be understandable given how Howard is a total piece of shit.
Yeah.
But that's it. I think he's one projecting upon the show and also not looking within the context of the world of the show, which I think is the major problem.
Yeah. And here's the thing, Macintosh. Even in the show, even in the context of the show, you are full of fucking shit. You are constantly full of fucking shit. And by the way, the one who pushes the most social boundaries in The Big Bang Theory is once again Penny, because she understands social boundaries well enough to be able to push them, and she is an attractive woman, which gives her the clout in order to push them, the ability in order to push them. The boys, on the other hand, are often crippled by the fact that they cannot, under any circumstances, transgress the social boundaries, or they will get beat the fuck up. Because let's face it, Macintosh, the level of boundary pushing that a attractive woman can get away with is very, very different from a slightly built, effeminate, geeky guy. Hi. Fortunately, I have the disabled card, and most people don't want to be the one to beat up a cripple. But most people don't have that, or at least don't have it as obviously as I do. So, yeah. But point being, in what world do you live, Macintosh, where women's comfort and safety is ever less important than anything relating to a man? Your entire ideology exists because men want to protect women. That's why there are male feminists. Okay? And I'm gonna let you in on a little secret here. Traditionalistic societies pulled the exact same shit, just in a different direction. We just went over the most extreme example I can think of, and the most obviously quote unquote misogynistic example I can think of, which is burqas. You would think, looking from the outside in, that burqas exist to make women miserable and not able to express their sexuality. But if you actually listen to the people, both the men and the women in Islamic culture, you would know the reason the burqa exists is as an extreme extension of the prohibition within the Quran to dress modestly. What is the rationale given in the Quran for women to dress modestly? It's not because her sexuality is a terrible, horrible thing and no one should ever have to look at it. It's because, according to the Quran, men are beasts who can easily be swayed into immoral behavior if they are transfixed by the beauty and purity of a woman. And I'm paraphrasing, but that is the essential point. The point being, if a man looks at a woman, he won't be able to help himself because she's just so beautiful and he's just such a beast. So in order to protect her, you enforce your women to dress modestly. And some people take that so far that they essentially are like, okay, men are so bad and so prone to doing evil, crazy shit that we won't even let them look at a woman. We'll just cover them in a black bag and cut eye holes in it so she can see, and hand holes in it so she can grab things, and that'll be good enough. And then no man will ever see her, and then she'll always be safe and always be pure. That's not misogyny, Macintosh. Even that extreme example is not misogyny. That is an attempt to make a woman's safety and comfort the priority of basically an entire civilization. And if even extremist Muslims want to provide and protect their women, and regular Christian traditionalists wanted to provide and protect for their women, and tribal men want to provide and protect for their women, and people like you want to provide and protect for their women, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's an innate human psychological desire for men and for basically everyone to want to provide and protect for women and children. It simply is. It's hardwired into us because as far as our brains are concerned, it is still the Stone Age. We have not psychologically or physically evolved much since we were Stone Age monkeys. And so our brains, essentially, our subconsciouses, still think we are in the Stone Age. It doesn't occur to evolution that we have improved the world, that we now live in extremely safe, fine-tuned civilizations. So instinctively, we're still very much, woman is childbearer and nurturer, therefore we must protect her because she is morally good and pure. That is still where we are psychologically as a species, whether you like it or not. The insinuation, Macintosh, that you are the only man, or that your ideology is the only ideology that wants to protect and provide for women's comfort and protection, is the single stupidest thing you've ever said, and it is possibly the most wrong thing you have ever said, you moron. Everyone wants to protect women, and they always have, and they always probably will, for as long as we're human beings. You want to know who never gets told your value as a human is more important than the job we have to make you do? Well, why don't you ask miners in the 19th century how looked after they were? Or how about you tell, roof tilers how looked after they were? Or how about you tell sanitation engineers who have to wade through shit and piss every day? Or how valued they are. Because I can almost guarantee you they'll laugh in your face. Or they might be gracious and self-aware enough to be grateful even for that lifestyle, because someone might care about them enough that when they come home at the end of the day, they're willing to nurture them a little bit. Which, yes, means that they also do what they do largely to protect their women and the families that they have with their women. You moron. Okay, Macintosh.
Macintosh. Hey, we only got like a couple minutes left, man, so.
So close and yet so far.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Macintosh.
Macintosh.
Tolerated. It's tolerated by their peers, by their girlfriends, and by their employers.
Well, despite your quirks, the three of you are very accomplished in your respective fields.
I don't know what you mean by quirks, but
The trope downplays the sexism of men who don't fit into the macho stereotype by framing it as pathetic, as non-threatening, and as not that big of a deal.
Witchy.
Okay.
Whatever. I'm not.
You want to know what's going to happen, Macintosh? If you get your way, if you convince people that we should treat frail, geeky, non-threatening guys like every social faux pas they commit is the worst, most immoral thing ever. Okay. This is why this is fucking with my brain. Because he doesn't see the very obvious fact that this is exactly how you cause a mass riot or lynching or a street fight where a bunch of people just gang up on someone and beat them up. This exact mentality, Macintosh, is exactly what led to nerds being beat up in the first place. Because they were socially awkward, they didn't get the social cues, and people who didn't know any better internalized that failure to read social cues as creepy, sleazy, hostile, and threatening. And to put the violator of social norms in their place, they beat them the fuck up. And moreover, this isn't an isolated incident. It doesn't just apply to nerds. You want to know what the rationale for lynching was, Macintosh? Most of the rationale for lynching had nothing to do with race. The rationale for lynching was our good, pure white women over here, our aristocratic white women over here, is so pure and decent that no one can look at her without desiring her. So if we ever catch one of those icky, undesirable tribal men over there pining after our good, pure white women, they're so basic and animalistic that they will try and rape them. And we can't have that. We can't ever have our women be made uncomfortable or put in harm's way in any way. We have to lynch them because they can't do horrible things to our women folk if they're dead. This is exactly the mentality that leads to genocide, Macintosh. You isolate a group of people. You claim that the position they have is not deserved, or that treating it like it is deserved is a problem, or they're a threat to women somehow. And then you just quietly walk away while the people you've convinced of this try to make the world more safe for their women and more fair. And boom, we have nerds getting beaten up. And boom, we have black men being accused of raping white women even if they had consensual sex with them and being lynched. And boom, eventually we have Hitler going, the biggest threat to the Aryan woman, is the evil corruptive influence of those short, awkward-looking Jewish guys, So we must put them all into gas chamber, to protect the purity of the Aryan bloodline and the sanctity of the Aryan woman,
Dalton, might want to wrap it up.
Yeah, sorry.
Hey,
But
good.
but you see my point though. This is exactly the mentality that leads to excesses of holding people accountable. Because if you start the conversation with "we don't hold these people accountable enough," some people are going to go, "Okay, how much harder do we need to push down on them to hold them accountable?" And then boom, chaos. You dickhead. You remorseless dickhead who can only think about his own ideology. Macintosh.
Okay. Um,
Of course, the reality is that sexism is a big deal, as practically any women involved in geek subcultures will tell you.
Everybody's staring at me.
There is, sadly, no shortage of real life examples of men involved in nerdy hobbies or professions who behave exactly like the guys on The Big Bang Theory. And
okay, don't go. I'll be back.
Okay. Macintosh, how do you feel about non-feminist women in gaming spaces? Because a lot of non-feminist women or anti-feminist women in geek spaces don't have this problem. Because they're more focused on the quality of the hobby in question or the interest in question, and they don't see their sacred femininity as the most important thing about them, because they are complex people who have skills and abilities beyond just look at the moral purity of my badge. Macintosh. That's the difference. When feminist women, or feminists in general, let's face it, because I'm not particularly fond of you being tangentially in geek spaces either, just for the record, because I find your ideology to be a problem. But when feminist women, or conservative evangelicals, for that matter, just again for balance, when someone who's a moralistic twat comes into a space that is primarily focused on value, expression, fun, creativity, and so on, when someone comes into those spaces and says your interest, your leisure interest, is not living up to the standards of my morality, so we need to change everything about it in order to make it moral, in order to make it pure, those people will get shunned. Full stop. Because if you don't fit with the culture of a subculture, you will be you will be selected out of that subculture. It has nothing to do with sex. It has everything to do with mentality. Some nerdy hipster fuck who believes all this critical theory feminist woo-woo bullshit, like yourself, would not last 5 minutes in my D&D group. We would all be mocking you, Macintosh. Because your ideologies, every time you saw an orc and you said, well, that's racist because I see orcs as an allegory for black people somehow. Or you see, female characters having a lower strength score than male characters in general because, how physiology works in basically every world in which there are males and females. And you whine about that, people will mock you because you are being an overly sensitive, moralistic twit, and you're not focusing on the parameters of the skill at the game, or you're not focusing on developing competency at the hobby, or knowledge of the hobby, or passion for the hobby. And therefore, you are not welcome in the hobby. It has nothing to do with sex, or race, or gender, or whatever arbitrary demographic you want to spew. It has everything to do with the kind of person you are. If the kind of person you are, irrespective of your demographic, is a nerd who wants to excel at whatever given hobby or interest you want to name, and you're okay with a culture that is very competency, passion, expertise, and meritocracy focused, if you're okay with that and you thrive on that and you want to encourage that, then you will be welcomed with open arms, no matter how much of a noob you are. You will find someone who is willing to take you under their wing and show you the ropes. If you come to it with genuine enthusiasm, genuine desire to gain expertise and passion, genuine desire to gain skills in that particular space. But if you come in waving a Bible and being a moralistic evangelical, or do you come in being a feminist and waving around bell hooks? I know bell hooks is one of your favorites, so let's say bell hooks. If you come in waving a bell hooks, feminist is for everyone book in everyone's face, and saying, it says here in this particular good book that we need to all operate morally on this, in this way, and we're not doing that, which makes this immoral, then you will be treated the same way as the moralistic evangelical who says D&D is a path to Satanism or the devil or some shit. Because your morality has no place in a culture that has nothing to do with morality. And everything to do with art, expression, expertise, creativity, and skill. And if you have a problem with those things, there's the door, no matter how straight, white, and male you happen to be. Whereas if you accept those things, and you in fact love those things, and those are the things that you prefer, then you will be welcomed with open arms regardless. Especially if you come in with a certain amount of research or passion or effort already put into the thing. Because we like testing each other's skills and expertise and passion. It's one of the things that lets us bond socially. For someone who is so perturbed by the idea of socially awkward men getting away with toxic masculinity, you yourself are demonstrating a certain level of social awkwardness right now, because you don't understand how camaraderie can be built based around rites of passage or shit testing or skill or the testing of someone's mettle. Basically, it's a key feature in competitive cultures, whether it's geek spaces or sports spaces. Granted, I don't have much of a point of reference for sports spaces, but I imagine it's the same way with them. You give people shit to see how much shit they can take, and then when they can take the shit, or heaven forbid, give it back, when they can engage in double-sided banter, that increases your respect for that person. But when they wilt and moralize at the drop of every hat, that person is an unwelcome shyster, no matter what morality they're pushing. Okay. Macintosh, when Brainstormer comes back.
I'm back. I actually came back about a minute ago. I just figured I'd let you finish.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, sorry. I had to really handle something off camera.
Dog related or something else?
I'll tell you after.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Macintosh.
Macintosh.
And it's not harmless, and it's not adorkable.
Sexual harassment scandals that have been sweeping through Silicon Valley.
That 60% of women who work in the tech industry have reported unwanted sexual advances.
In its simplest form, it's a torrent of attacks against women.
A frequent problem inside Uber, sexual harassment and sexism.
Okay, what do those people mean when they say the word sexism? Because sexism can mean practically anything depending on how you choose to define it. And if what you're defining as sexism is not something worth getting upset about, then we're not getting upset about it. If it is actually a case of someone was directly harmed by something, then by all means we can get upset about that. But conflating things like that to the quips and social faux pas that we see in something like The Big Bang Theory is irresponsible, and philosophically speaking, it's a false equivalency. You're drawing an equivalency between two things that are not comparable. And you're doing so mostly in order to drum up more moral legitimacy for your point of view and undermining anyone else who would disagree with you by calling them immoral, which isn't a very intellectually honest way of engaging in an argument, Macintosh. And also, it shows a wrong-headed worldview that means you need to get your head out of your ass. Macintosh.
Macintosh.
And it's harmful in all the ways the Big Bang Theory tells us it's not. It's damaging to women. It's damaging to their sense of safety, to their well-being, and to their careers.
Former Google engineer who wrote a 10-page memo criticizing the company's diversity program, saying women lag behind in the tech world because of their biology.
Yeah, that's. I
Yes.
kind of want to read that on the fact that I want to hear the argument. I mean, on the basis, it does sound.
His argument was essentially women are psychologically wired more towards social settings and less towards hard and fast like engineering and technology. Like women in general are less interested in the fields of science, technology, and mathematics. So obviously, if less women are interested in these subjects, you'll see less women in the workplace in these fields. That was basically the argument.
That's fair. I mean, that's just more of the fact of, do they want to choose that profession? That's
yeah. And also, are they wired to do well in that field?
If they choose that profession, I kind of assume they. Well, okay, that's actually never mind.
Some people think they're better than they are at things, which is the thing I was getting at there. But
yeah, okay, fair enough.
Macintosh, what do you say to women who aren't feminists, who don't believe in the patriarchy, who don't believe in the wage gap? What do you say to women who say, yeah, somebody made a joke at my expense and it had the punchline of those women harp derp derp, but I wasn't offended? What do you say to women who think like that?
Also, it's actually been a while since we've done this, but picture all this stuff, but the roles are reversed, like gender bent universe.
Yeah. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that instead of James Damore, it was I don't know, Janet Damore, and she was the head of like a bakery company somewhere, and there was in this gender bent universe, there's an ideology that says meninism, which is like men are oppressed because of this, that, and the other. Would you yell at Janet Damore for explaining that men generally go into baking less than women do, and therefore there are more women in baking than and if not, if you can understand in that instance why you would see fewer men in baking, because men are less likely to like that sort of thing. And this doesn't apply to me, by the way. I have been a cooking fan for a very long time. One of my favorite shows ever since I was a little kid was the show Good Eats with Alton Brown, and I still love it. Especially since it recently came out with new episodes, but that's a sidebar.
I'm sorry, no, please finish your point, then I have a sidebar. It's not important right now.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, if this were a makeup company and you were trying to explain as a woman to your employees why there are fewer men in this field, wouldn't it make sense to say men are wired less likely to like this thing, therefore there are fewer men in this industry? And just like that, in James Damore's case, women generally don't tend to enjoy science, technology, engineering, and mathematics quite as much. So there's fewer representation of women in that industry. That doesn't mean there aren't exceptions to the rule. That doesn't mean there aren't men who are flamboyant and like all sorts of feminine shit. Hi. And it doesn't mean there aren't masculine women who could beat both Brainstormer and I to a pulp before we even said ow, vis-a-vis Ronda Rousey and so on. Brainstormer would probably try to make out with a woman who tried that, but that's
Let's save it for Valentine's Day, man.
Yeah.
Like next February, I mean,
Mhm.
Anyway, unless you have something else.
No, go ahead. Do your point.
I just got to thinking with the whole like gender bent universe thing. I kind of want to visit, not for the way like most dudes would, just on. No, it's more. I'd just be curious to see how the world is. I mean, like obviously, it'd be very much. It'd just be identical to ours, but
with roles and things reversed. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the Fiona and Cake universe in Adventure Time and stuff, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm just curious by it, on to see how things. I'm just curious to see what it's about. Like I know pretty much it'd be the same world, just again we're chicks, which is weird to me, obviously, but whatever. But also like. Also, just the thing God damn it, just like famous people too that would be gender bent. You'd have your Alberta Einsteins, or I'm just imagining a woman with like the crazy hair that Einstein had. Or what kind of name would a female Gordon Ramsay have?
Georgia Ramsay.
Okay, let's go with that because I can't think of anything else. But no, it's also like a movie, a female version of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Commando would be funny as hell to me to watch.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, if anyone's got any ideas on what kind of things would be different or just kind of funny in a gender bent universe to us, like write them down in the comments or whatever. I'm curious to hear your ideas.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. We've had this conversation many times. It's always a little bit of a head fuck when it comes up.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we banana? I mean, not Macintosh.
We shall Macintosh.
The unnamed Google engineering employee wrote, "Biological causes may explain why we don't see equal representation. Men have a higher drive for status, and women on average have more neuroticism."
If we added a laugh track to that clip, it would be indistinguishable from the casual sexism that we can see on practically.
Okay, for one thing, I feel like those phrases were taken very out of context to what's actually written, and that is like the biggest issue I have with when these arguments are made, is when like they try to pull quote unquote sources, they always phrase them out of context, and it.
Yeah, because in their minds the context doesn't matter. What matters is just that those words occurred, and that those words occurred is enough evidence.
Context doesn't matter. Context doesn't matter. That grinds me. That grinds me in a very bad way.
Yeah, that grinds Brainstormer's gears. To call back to a Family Guy joke.
Before Ed Brewer says Helena Bonham Carter would play Alberta Einstein.
Well, but in the gender bent universe, Helena Bonham Carter would be Hank Bonham Carter.
Heinrich.
That works better. Heinrich Bonham Carter.
Still would that would be a great actor, because Helena Bonham Carter is such a great actress and should be given more work these days because you don't see her much often, which is a shame.
Yeah. And that also means like Helen Mirren would be Hal Mirren.
Harrison. I don't know. It's like Hal Mirren just doesn't sound.
I'm just like trying to keep the name as close in the gender inverse as possible.
Okay, this is a weird thing because it just occurred to me that the famous directors that are like our favorites would be female versions in that universe, in the gender bent one. Guillermo del Toro.
I don't know enough Spanish names to come up with a gender inverse.
Neither do I. I was going to think of it. Instead of Hellboy, it would be Hellgirl, or Hellgirl, which actually is a Hellgirl in the comics. So,
yay!
I mean, pretty much everything's pretty much the same. Just
instead of Abe Sapien, it would be Annabelle Sapien.
Annabelle Sapien. Well, I don't know. Anna Sapien, actually. Well, to be fair, like it is abbreviated anyway with Abe, so yeah.
And then I guess if we wanted to keep that it's abbreviated, we could call her Belle Sapien, or
Anna Sapien. Like that was the first thing that came to me.
Well, I just wanted to keep the I guess so.
Either way, something just occurred to me with like the presidents of the United States.
So,
Annabelle Lincoln, 16th president of the United States. I mean, it still ends the same way for that person.
Shot by Jane Wilkes Booth.
Yeah, it's like it wouldn't be weird in that universe, and it really shouldn't be. Like it's not, but like just thinking about it, and like all the events that happened in the world in history.
Mm-hmm.
With the roles of man and women reversed, honestly, I'm honestly more surprised that. Yeah, I'd honestly be more surprised that the human race didn't go extinct. If
we'd be sitting here, arguing with Joanna McIntosh about her Meninist beliefs. And we'd be sitting here being women's rights advocates instead of men's rights advocates.
But I'm just mean, I suppose. Georgina Washington, Ed Brewer said. Yeah.
Or Georgia Washington. We wanted to keep it as close as possible.
I think that might be Georgia, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, it's just like, think about it. Like, okay, if it's still... women and men's roles are reversed, right? Or gender bent, I suppose.
Yeah. So women
still biologically, women still have to have children.
Yeah, but
so,
they all.
I'm just saying, like technically, the human race would be pretty fucked.
Unless there's a circumstance whereby men are the ones who give birth in this universe.
I'm not thinking about that because that's just fucking weird, and we're not doing that. I'm just saying again, gender bent.
Yeah, but if the gender roles were reversed, so that the women were the ones that had to be the protectors and fighters, and the men were the ones who were supposed to be like sensitive and shit. Yeah. So
they will care for the children, but I'm just assuming the women would have the children, but the men would care for them. That's all I'm thinking about. Like I don't want to think about the biological nature of how that would work. I don't.
This hypothetical is always a clusterfuck.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, jackass. Okay, let's.
I'm sorry. You know how my brain works. When I hear a premise, I have to take it to its logical conclusion, no matter how awkward it is.
Anyway, let's just fucking finish this video for fuck's sake. My God, I regret this tangent. I regret it so much now. Thank you, asshole. Thank you very much.
I regret nothing.
regret that fucking image in your head. Regret it. It will be burned into your sockets. Anyway,
Apparently, the gender inverse universe is now the Ark of the Covenant. Look by your eyes and burn your skull.
yeah. Anyway, let's just get this video done, man. We're almost done with it.
Yeah, Macintosh.
Any episode of The Big Bang Theory.
The trouble isn't with me, Penny. It's with your gender. And someday scientists will discover that second X chromosome contains nothing but nonsense and twaddle.
We're talking about Penny's job.
And how difficult it is to do when she's bloated, cranky, and crampy. Continue.
Okay, again, context. One, Penny and Sheldon always have a kind of frenemies relationship. They literally make fun of each other constantly.
Also, this is partly due to the writing going downhill post season 5. If you limited it to just when, like, the first 3 seasons, when Sheldon was a full-fledged character and not a flanderized person, you wouldn't have half of these. Also, we just went over the reason why Sheldon hyper-focuses on women is because it is one of the things that make women more different than him, and that makes them harder to understand, especially because he grew up in a sheltered Texan home where he probably wasn't allowed to look at things from a psychological lens or from a biological lens. So when he was able to, he kind of jumped to internalizing them. And also, Macintosh, just to actually address your point that you're trying to make here, if you could add a laugh track to the news of the James Moore thing, and it would be indistinguishable from anything that happens in The Big Bang Theory, that's actually a hell of a compliment to The Big Bang Theory that I wouldn't even pay it, which is basically you saying that The Big Bang Theory is somehow realistic, which, no. Macintosh.
Yep. One sec. I was looking at comments. No new ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. Macintosh.
Just because the performance of a geeky version of masculinity is markedly different from traditional Hollywood archetypes, that doesn't necessarily mean that geeky guys are any less invested in sexism. The bottom line here is that there's nothing cute or harmless about misogyny. Even
Okay, Dom, before you do, because I know you're going to do overhands.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No one is invested in sexism. And if they are, they probably have problems in their heads, okay?
Yeah.
Fucking mental issues. Okay? And you being, okay, and you, Mr. Macintosh, suggesting that someone or a entire species, an entire portion of a species I'm sorry, I'm losing my mind here because I'm a little fucking angry. Is invested in a concept that has somewhat legitimate basis, but also doesn't in the modern world, is idiotic and short-sighted and has no real evidence to, like, legit actual evidence, not the evidence, not the quote-unquote evidence that you have been showing throughout this video.
Yeah, not interpretation, not misappropriation, not taking things out of context and then extrapolation. Actual hard and fast evidence that someone can point to directly. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, to be fair, that's what you I mean, to be fair, that was pretty much where I was going. So
okay. yeah, Macintosh, sexism is an almost universal negative in the West, and even in the East, even in the underdeveloped parts of the world, we just established, no one wants to hate women. No one. Misogyny in practice is actually more often the side effect of someone's good intentions going wrong. The impulse to protect women being so strident that you must prevent women from being free, or the impulse that you want women to be so free that they can't have any structure. Either of these things would be negative, and yet neither of them is the result of misogyny. And if you really think that any great portion of the world is devoted to sexism as a value, you might want to look in the mirror and ask yourself the question of what is the balance between sexism against women currently, especially in the Western world, and sexism against men. Because most often in modern first world countries, when people are sexist against women, they're sexist in the affirmative, which is to say, you're a woman, therefore you must be more morally pure, or you must be a better person than men by default, or you must need more help and protection than men because just by default. That's the kind of sexism women get. The kind of sexism men get, Macintosh, is, ew, men are aggressive and toxic and prudish and stupid and rapey and all these other things. You know, men can't control themselves. Men need to be lectured by women. Men need to acknowledge women as their betters. Men are stupid, so they need to defer to their wives. That's the kind of sexism that men get, Macintosh.
Right. Sorry, I know. I was.
If they get paid attention to at all.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say again, like, to bring up this concept, which is the gender bent universe, and you like kind of look at that stuff from the perspective of that.
If you look at the opposite of our universe from the perspective of our universe, you would see why your ideology is so stupid. Because your ideology is the equivalent of a world in which men are protected and provided for, and yet meninism exists.
I feel like you would have a field day in that universe if you ever went there.
I mean, I kind of would be screwed either way because my tendencies probably still wouldn't be met.
Oh, actually, that's pretty fair. Hey, at least you'd be able to talk and interact with that universe's yourself. So at least have someone who can relate to you.
Yeah, and
with your luck, you're in love with yourself.
I'd probably end up having kids with myself, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
And that sounded way more narcissistic than it did in my head, but you know what I'm saying.
I get it. Hey, I'm the one who initiated it, the idea.
Mm-hmm. And if we're being honest, your gender flipped counterpart would kind of fit your criteria, so
honestly, we'd probably just be friends.
Uh-huh. And here's the really, really creepy part. Because multiverse, somewhere out there is a world in which the female version of me and the female version of you are responding to a Joanna Macintosh whining about meninism while simultaneously pointing out why the idea of meninism is stupid in that universe and why women's rights are being ignored and shit.
Yeah, technically we're having the same conversation right now as those versions of ourselves.
Yep.
That is
So,
fucking weird.
yeah. How are you doing, ladies? We're having the conversation too, and I know that the female version of me just said the exact same shit.
Wow.
Except to us. That's
All right, moving the fuck on because I do not want that.
before we get into the twilight zone of like being like multiversial voodoo dolls of each other and being able to communicate across multiverse.
Yeah. Anyway, plus we only got like a minute left, so.
Yeah. Macintosh.
Even when it's coming from men who may play Cleon Boggle.
Time.
It's really not that difficult to write nerdy male characters who aren't total creeps. There's Abed from the show Community.
You have to understand about Abed. He's usually, adorable weird, like Mork for Mork.
There's Lionel from Dear White People, the TV series. And there's Ben.
You're recommending a series.
I haven't
how that's
seen that.
How is it?
Wasn't it taken off like Netflix?
I think so.
Oh shit. Okay, so Dawn's not here. Oh wait.
Am I not coming through? What happened? Did I?
Okay. So technical issues here.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, Dawn.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think technical issues happened. That's been a while.
Yeah. I think it's just a matter of either your computer or my phone overheating because it's hot. Maybe.
I think I honestly think it was a mixture of both, and also my Wi-Fi. A bit. Acted a bit. I don't know.
Anyway, I was asking you what you thought of Dear White People.
I haven't seen it. I had heard about it. Like, it had this whole controversy, I think, like 2 years ago. Honestly, I didn't really care about that kind of show because, like, it's not really up my alley of show to watch. You know what I mean? Like, I'm more, well, our tastes are kind of pretty similar, honestly. So,
yeah.
But I thought it was taken off Netflix because it was like controversial or something. I don't know. I didn't.
Yeah, I don't. Although the title just kind of made me cringe a little bit because it's like.
I heard it was like a reboot of something, like a show from like, I don't know, the 70s or 80s. I don't remember much because I didn't really pay attention because I didn't really care about it. It wasn't really up my alley.
Yeah. Do you remember what show it was supposed to be a reboot of? Because I don't remember any shows like that and I watched a lot of like TV Land and Nick at Night.
It was literally called Dear White People.
I don't think any such show ever existed before this. But anyway.
I think it might have been a radio broadcast. I don't know. Again, man, I I don't have any fucking clue. It's not something.
In any case, Macintosh has bad taste. We've established this.
I don't know. Parks and Recs are fine. I watch a few episodes here and there. I like that show.
I mean, it's and Community is pretty decent. I'll give him that.
I haven't honestly. That is kind of a show I don't really care for.
I haven't seen much of it, but the couple episodes I've watched I've kind of enjoyed, so it's whatever.
Yeah.
And I know Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland came from Community, so it can't be all that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you don't like Rick and Morty.
That's probably going to get a lot of people we know upset.
I mean things are pretty split on Rick and Morty, especially after season 3. I still like it. I will admit that season 3 is probably the weakest of the seasons, but it had some of the best and worst episodes of the show. So anyway, Macintosh.
Yeah, got nothing for this part.
Yeah.
Macintosh.
And from Parks and Rec.
Presenting the Cones of Dunshire, a brand new gaming experience.
All these characters somehow manage to perform a quirky, awkward, and often humorous form of masculinity without the undercurrent of retrograde sexism. It's
Yeah, but
Hollywood
most
writers.
But most of them are hipsters, not nerds. And the fact that you can't tell the difference pisses me off.
Oh, that gets me. I mean, Ben White is a nerd, but he's it's more. It's not really touched upon, honestly.
Yeah, it's either,
or it's the butt of a joke, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, it's either very surface level and not very in depth or a very significant part of their characters, or it's mistaking hipsters and nerds and confusing them.
I hate being compared. I don't want to be compared to a hipster. I've made my opinions on hipsters pretty fucking clear.
And as have I. I've always said that hipsters are what happens when you take a nerd and you remove all of the important shit.
You know, once I went to like this frozen yogurt shop right next to a hot dog, like to my
that might have been your first mistake. Frozen yogurt.
I went there with my uncle and we just chilled and we had some good. It was actually pretty good ice cream, honestly, like an ice cream shop actually, not frozen yogurt. I mean, it had frozen yogurt, but besides the point. I see this guy.
Frozen yogurt is tasty though. I'm not gonna lie.
I've never had it. Don't really want to. You know, just be fucking.
Because of the hipster thing. Because of how popular it is with hipsters.
Yeah, just be fucking ice cream. But no, I see this guy walking in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Business suit, right? Business suit, and like it's a real nice business suit too.
Uh-huh.
And the motherfucker's wearing sneakers. Like I realize it's. I can deal with that when like it's. Like in certain cases, I'm fine with it, but
because it might just be eccentricity, which is fine. So
yeah, but
still,
when you want to look professional, you look fucking professional. You want to add a little flair? Sure, get like a nice colored tie or something.
Just this whole, or and better yet, here's my advice: find something that you will look good in, that you can wear in as many situations as possible. What I do, because it doesn't matter if I'm just going to go down to the pub and have a drink with my bros, or if I'm going to a wedding, or if I'm going to be meeting the queen. This outfit works. And if I need it to be more formal, all I need to do is slap on a jacket. If I need it to be less formal, all I need to do is
take off the bow tie.
You shut your filthy whore mouth. That is never happening. And if you ever suggest that again, I swear to God, I will stop talking to you.
David Tennant, Doctor Who, was a suit and sneakers guy. He pulled it off. The guy I'm talking about didn't pull it off.
Yeah, because the Doctor is inherently eccentric, so that works.
But okay,
But
also the fact that
what I was going to say is short sleeves, or better yet, I just add sunglasses, and it automatically ups the eccentric / cool factor enough that it works in an informal setting.
right. Also, there's a difference between pulling it off and not, and the guy I'm talking about did not pull it off, in my opinion.
Yeah,
He looked like the guy from Adam Ruins Everything. You know, Adam.
Adam Conover. Little mister, I'm going to tell you a bunch of random facts as though it's the whole story and never give any of the connective tissue. And then act as though finding out information on a topic should ruin it instead of adding to it, while simultaneously admitting that it doesn't ruin it and that it does add to it. God, I used to like Adam Ruins Everything, I do, and until he started going more political, and it was very obvious he had a slant one way or the other, and then it was like, and you're not being objective, therefore fuck you.
Yeah. Also, the guy's just like, it's the same thing. It's kind of the same reason I don't really like Grace Randolph. It's how they talk, which is very condescending and like just
the formal and robotic and kind of not genuine.
Yeah, pretty much. It's so fucking fake, which is I've never respected that at all.
I don't get that with Grace quite as badly. She has her moments where I'm like, it's very obvious you wanted to swear in this instance, and you found a way around it, or you were obviously being stiff because you're in like a very particular context. She has her moments like that, but I can overlook that because she actually tries to be a legit entertainment journalist, and I think she holds herself to the standards of what she thinks a proper journalist should be, and I have no problem with that.
I don't know. It's just how they kind of talk often. It just comes off very disingenuous to me, and that's kind of my major issue with like hipsters overall, which is the fakeness. Like you can
it's never I like this thing because I like it. It's always I like this thing because of some socio-political gobbledygook, or I'm being edgy, or I'm being a rebel, or I'm being, if your main reasons for liking things has more to do with the way other people see you than your own desires, what the fuck are you doing?
Right. Again. Okay. So the whole suit and sneakers thing can work. It's just, again, some people just can't pull it off, in my opinion.
You've got to, and this goes back to basically the core of everything in relation to this topic is you have to understand yourself. If you don't understand yourself, if you don't know who you are, no one else is going to know who you are either.
Yeah. Okay, anyway.
Yeah. Macintosh.
1 sec. I gotta fix this thing. Make sure it's like.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Anyway. Ready?
Yep. Macintosh.
Macintosh.
To retire the adorable misogynist trope once and for all. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see...
Okay.
Yeah. Just go fuck yourself, Jonathan McIntosh. But we did it. We stared into the abyss that is John McIntosh, and we came out the other side. And it's another one gone, another one gone, another one bites the dust. It took us 3 hours, but here we are. And after Brainstormer gets back. I don't know if he wants to still cover the other thing or start covering the other thing or
Oh, no,
not.
I muted because I was switching to the next video. But the thing is, it is kind of longer, like by maybe 5 minutes compared to the last one. And I don't really think we would have time to cover it now.
Right. I think we should just save it for the next milestone one.
So 150.
Yeah, or we could do 125 if you want to get to it soonish.
You know what? Yeah, 125 seems fine. Then we can clear this one up and just kind of move on to what to do with 150. That's
yeah.
Okay.
I already have an idea for 150. It's
we'll talk. We'll hopefully you can write it down or whatever.
Yeah.
When we get
I'll send it in the DMs and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. 5 weeks from now, folks, we'll cover something that is from a person that we've actually reviewed articles from. This just to give you like context and to be ready for when we get to this one. This is a video from a Miss Melina Pendulum. That's the name wrong, I'm sorry. But she also goes by Princess Weeks of the Mary Sue. Now, this is actually the funniest thing for us, or the weirdest thing, I guess, is, well, it's going to be weird for you guys when we say it. She's actually one of the lesser crazy, or lesser, she's more of an objective writer for the Mary Sue.
Yeah, she's the least insane of the writers for the Mary Sue, and she does actually seem to have some kind of philosophical background, as evidenced by the video we will be responding to it from episode 125.
Yeah. Also, it's just like she is capable of being objective and actually have points of actual arguing, which is something I can respect. And
yeah, and cannot often be said for Rachel Leishman, who is by far in a way probably the worst writer for the Mary Sue, which I haven't seen much of her writing recently, so I don't know.
Dude, they don't really write anything these days, to be honest. It's weird.
I mean, it's good because that means less people are focusing on the Mary Sue, but it's bad because it gives us less.
Let me rephrase that. They do write still. It's just they don't write anything of interest when it
comes to our topics.
Yeah, to our topics is the thing. So yeah, we're, like I said, when we get there, when it's 125, we'll cover that video. It might take a little bit, just on the fact that it's pretty packed. Like, respectively, Dom will handle the philosophy stuff. I'll handle pretty much everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah. So with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
never go full Macintosh. Nah, fuck off.